Chapter 1298. After a series of battles since entering the Central Plains, he had finally obtained a companion spiritual treasure that he had yet to destroy, and it was a jade demon's companion spiritual treasure. On the other side, just as Tianchu was about to fall into the encirclement of the devil army, a blue flying sword abruptly appeared beside him, slicing half of the body of a blood Shura that had taken advantage of the situation to attack him. Tianchu seized the opportunity to pierce the blood Shura's eye socket directly into its brain. The thin water-flowing sword had already entered the encirclement, forcibly opening up a gap for Tianchu. Two jade Shuras in the distance were already pouncing over, and Tianchu did not dare to continue fighting. He turned around and escaped the encirclement under Lu Ping's cover. On the other side, after Lu Ping had sent the jade demon's companion spiritual treasure flying, Lu Ping only cared about saving Tianchu, who was about to be surrounded by Mara. The jade Rui had flown more than 100 feet away. The companion spiritual treasure in the jade demon's hand was equivalent to a second tribulation spiritual treasure. In the world of cultivation, it was an incredible treasure. Usually, only the late Dharma adepts of large sects had the right to wield a second tribulation spiritual treasure. Although the jade Rui was only a companion spiritual treasure, if it was modified by a great craftsman, it could easily become a first disaster spiritual treasure. It was even possible that it could become a second disaster spiritual treasure after surviving the second thunder calamity. This treasure was enough to arouse the greed of everyone. Moreover, after the treasure had been sent flying by Lu Ping, he did not have the time to pick it up. Instead, he had to save Tianchu first. This was a good chance. As long as they could snatch this treasure and leave immediately, rogue cultivators would be willing to wander the world for this treasure, and cultivators who belonged to sects would also be willing to leave their sects for this treasure. If they had any sense of fairness, their sects would not hesitate to become enemies with the now famous Zhanling sect for this spiritual treasure, without waiting for the spirit treasure to fall to the ground. 4 or 5 of the cultivators who were hiding in the surrounding void were already incapable of stopping themselves from rushing forward to snatch the spirit treasure. After those 4 or 5 cultivators made their move, another 5 or 6 cultivators swiftly responded. Additionally, their targets were not the spirit treasure. Rather, it was the 4 or 5 cultivators who had rushed forward to snatch the spirit treasure. Seeing that a huge battle was about to erupt around this life companion spiritual treasure, the cultivators who were hiding revealed themselves and made a move to snatch it. This immediately attracted the support of Mara's army, who were rushing over from both sides. A mid-Dharma adept took advantage of the chaos to fend off the attacks of several adepts and was the first to reach the primordial spirit treasure. Seeing that the primordial spirit treasure was about to fall into his hands, he could not help but feel excited. He was born in a small sect, and although he was already a mid-Dharma adept, he could be said to be the first person in his sect in 1,000 years. However, he was extremely dissatisfied with his birth. In his opinion, if he had been born in a large sect or a holy land, even if he had not reached the level of a late Dharma adept, he would at least be a peak Dharma adept. He would not be weaker than people like Lu Tianping, Fan Mingjie, or Yuan Feixiang. Even if he had been born in a mid-sized sect, he might have had at least one spirit treasure in his possession. However, he had been born in a small sect, and as a mid-Dharma adept, he only had a top-notch spirit-nurturing treasure in his possession. It was so shabby that he felt that he was too embarrassed to show off his treasure in front of other adepts of the same level. However, looking at the life companion spiritual treasure that was about to fall into his hands, the cultivator was filled with joy. As long as he could get his hands on this Rui jade, even if it could only become a first-level spirit treasure in the future, his abilities would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. It would not be a problem for him to even be able to squeeze into the list of battle achievements. However, just as he was about to wave his hand and grab the Rui jade from the ground, a small person about a foot tall suddenly jumped out of thin air and landed in front of the Rui jade. It giggled at the cultivator and hugged the life companion spiritual treasure that was almost as tall as the cultivator. Cloning. The cultivator was shocked. After the battle at Jinling Station, Jinling had made a name for himself in the training world of Central Mainland. The North Sea water sword deity had also become a hot topic in the training world after killing Azura. The news that Lu Tianping had inherited the lost secret technique of cloning was naturally known by many. Zhenling was not someone to be trifled with. The cultivator looked at the life companion's spiritual treasure and gritted his teeth. He had to go all out. After all, Zhenling was an overseas sect. It would not be able to behave atrociously in Central Mainland. Who knew how many sects in Central Mainland were jealous of Zhenling's power? If Zhenling dared to stir up trouble, it would become a target for all. The cultivator flicked his wrist, and his top-notch spirit-nurturing treasure was already ready to go. However, at this moment, the cloning suddenly exploded with an aura that was no weaker than that of a mid-Dharma adept. The cultivator was already like an arrow on a bowstring, and the spirit-nurturing treasure charged straight at the cloning. Unexpectedly, the cloning actually chuckled at him. The small willow sword on its back automatically unsheathed itself and collided with the spirit-nurturing treasure. Clang! The small willow sword and the cultivator's life companion's spiritual treasure were completely disproportionate in size. However, the result of the collision between the two was a draw. The cloning really did have the power of a mid-Dharma adept. While the mid-Dharma adept was still in a daze, Lu Xiaoping had already flown towards Lu Ping with a jade rui that was about the same size as his own body on his back. Behind the cultivator, a series of shouts and curses could be heard. The cultivator thought that it was because the cloning had taken away the life companion's spiritual treasure, and he himself felt that it was a great pity. However, when he turned around, his face was full of anger and he could not help but curse out loud. It turned out that when everyone had been fighting over the life companion's spiritual treasure, they had naturally been unable to hide themselves. Furthermore, the life companion's spiritual treasure had not been sent flying any further or any closer. It had landed in a position near the perimeter of Mara's army. The sudden appearance of more than 10 human cultivators in such a position naturally attracted the attention of Mara's army. More than half of the Mara's army that had previously surrounded Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu immediately rushed towards the 10 Dharma adepts. Although everyone was cursing, they did not dare to be careless. One by one, they took out their own treasures and spirit treasures and retreated as they fought. As for whether the life companion's spiritual treasure had been intentionally sent flying by Lu Tianping to such a delicate position to lure the many cultivators to attack, the crowd did not have time to think too much about it. Furthermore, the life companion's spiritual treasure did not belong to them in the first place. They rescued Yin Tianchu from the encirclement of Mara's army. While the Mara's army was distracted by more human cultivators, the two of them worked together to break out of the encirclement. At this time, on the other side, with the retreat of more than 10 human cultivators and the pursuit of many Mara's army, more and more cultivators who had been hiding in the void were forced to reveal themselves and join the battle. The battle between the two sides was getting bigger and bigger. It had already alerted the Mara's army that was surrounding Ziyang Palace's camp. Faced with the possibility of a pincer attack, the Mara's army returned to help. The scale of the battle grew bigger and bigger. At this time, Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu had already escaped from the range of the battle. That was close, Lu Ping said, but there was no trace of fear on his face. But the reward is not bad. A jade demon had been killed by Lu Ping, and Yin Tianchu had killed 3 blood Shura consecutively in a short period of time. The two of them had even obtained a life companion's spiritual treasure. With this, they had lured the surrounding cultivators who had been watching from the sidelines to join in the battle. This could be considered as relieving the pressure on Xie Tianyang and the rest. Yin Tianchu glanced coldly at the chaotic battle and spat out 2 words, idiots. Lu Ping smiled and said, "How about it? Find a chance to get some more?" Yin Tianchu looked at the photographic stone in his hand. The battle points displayed on it only showed 9, so he nodded and said, "I'm going to try my luck on the leaderboard as well." The photographic stone only showed individual battle points, not the points of others. However, when Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu had set off from Zhenling's camp, the 50th mid-Dharma cultivator on the leaderboard had already reached 38 points. At this time, he might have even more points. Yin Tianchu had managed to get 9 points in such a short period of time, which was not considered slow. However, he was still far from being able to make it onto the leaderboard. Hearing this, Lu Ping nodded and said, "All right, if you and I work together to make it onto the leaderboard, it shouldn't be too slow." Lu Ping knew that the sects wanted more disciples to make it onto the leaderboard. In fact, Lu Ping himself also believed that the rise of a sect did not depend on the strength of just one person. It was just that he was somewhat unhappy that this was happening to him. Since this was the case, he would work hard to help Yin Tianchu make it onto the leaderboard. Furthermore, even if Xinling were to fully assist other cultivators to make it onto the leaderboard, they could only help early Dharma adepts. Of course, mid-Dharma adepts were much harder to get onto the leaderboard than early Dharma adepts, but they also carried much more weight. After working together for this period of time, Lu Ping had a very clear understanding of Yin Tianchu's abilities. From what Lu Ping could see, Yin Tianchu's current abilities were completely capable of making it onto the leaderboard. At least from what he could see, Yin Tianchu's abilities were no weaker than the direct disciples of the famous sects in the Central Plains. Although he was still a distance away from the direct disciples of the Holy Land, such as the 5 Elements Juzi and the 6 Pulse Godly Swords, and he was no match for Xiahou Wushang, Chan Yu, and Chan Xiang, who had just broken through to the mid-Dharma stage, he could still put up a fight against the lower-ranked direct disciples of the Holy Lands, such as Zhu Zhuan and Qin Woyang. What's more, Yin Tianchu was more proficient in his stealth-killing secret technique instead of facing his enemies head-on. In this way, even those cultivators who were stronger than him might not be able to gain an advantage against him. This was also a great help in hunting down Mo Luo and seizing battle merit points. And after working together with Lu Ping would attack head-on to attract Mara's attention, while Yin Tianchu would hide and wait for an opportunity to assassinate him. The two of them working together would often result in more battle points. Just as the attention of Mara's army was attracted by the 10 or so Dharma adepts, Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu once again wandered around the periphery. For the next 3 days, the two of them worked together and succeeded several times. The points in Lu Ping's imaging stone had increased from 126 to 139 points. Yin Tianchu's points had even exceeded Lu Ping's, increasing from 14 points to 38 points. It was a pity that the two of them did not know how many points had increased to the lowest 50th place on the battle points leaderboard. However, it was clear that Yin Tianchu's current points were not enough to make it onto the leaderboard. Over the past 3 days, the two of them would always find an opportunity to strike and escape. Regardless of whether they succeeded or not, they never gave Mara's army a chance to react. And every time they succeeded, they would cause chaos in Mara's army, causing the high-level Mara's army to repeatedly run for their lives. At the same time, the siege of Ziyang Palace's west camp by the Mara's army was alleviated. The cultivators from Ziyang Palace who were stationed at the west camp quickly noticed this. Xie Tianyang and Su Jin quickly informed the seniors from their sect who were stationed at the west camp of Ziyang Palace. There were 3 great cultivators stationed at Ziyang Palace's west camp. 2 of them were second-generation disciples of Ziyang Palace, while the one in charge was a first-generation cultivator. After Xue Sanyi and Lao Zhu received the news from the two, he pondered for a moment and said to the other 2 great cultivators, "Could it be that someone is helping us from the periphery? Who would be so kind? Those cultivators from the various sects who only know how to take advantage of others?" The other second-generation great cultivator, Meng Shui, scoffed. "I'd rather believe that this is our station exerting more pressure on Mara's army, causing Mara's army to have no choice but to transfer reinforcements from the 2 sides." The first-generation great cultivator of Ziyang Palace, Hao Xiqing, who was the leader, shook his head and said, "From the news from the station, they are under more pressure than us. Clearly, they are unable to attract more reinforcements from Mara's army. And from the news from the peripheral family forces, it seems that a huge battle broke out outside the camp 3 days ago. It even attracted 2 Azuras to suppress it." When Hao Xiqing and Lao Zhu mentioned the peripheral family forces of Ziyang Palace, Meng Shui snorted coldly. However, when he heard that there were really cultivators fighting with Mara's army on a large scale, he was taken aback and said, 3 days ago, wasn't that the time when Mara's army was besieging and the situation was tense? Then, Mara's army suddenly retreated. Could it be that someone is really helping our sect? Not necessarily. This time, it was Laozu Shuesanyi's turn to deny it. I'm more willing to believe that those cultivators who were watching from the sidelines were accidentally discovered by Mara's army and chased after them. It's just that these people have always been very concerned about their own lives. How could they have fallen into the hands of Mara's army this time? For the past 3 days, the Mara's army outside the camp has been in chaos from time to time. Could it be that someone has been harassing them outside? Xie Tianyang and Su Jin looked at each other. The two seemed to have thought of something and wanted to say something but stopped themselves. Hao Xiqing, who was watching from the side, asked directly, "Did the two of you think of something?" Xie Tianyang thought for a moment and said, "Martial granduncle, martial uncles, have you paid attention to the battle merit ranking for the past few days?" Battle merit ranking? The three Laozu Shues looked at each other. Shuesanyi Laozu coughed and said, "If you have something to say, just say it." Xie Tianyang chuckled and said, "The battle merit ranking of the Great Dharma cultivators is one thing. The Great Dharma cultivators Laozu are basically guarding the various camps and rarely go out to hunt down Mara to fight for points. As for the early Dharma cultivators, although the competition for the battle merit ranking is intense, due to the limitations of their abilities, they may not be able to make much of an impact on the battlefield. However, the battle merit ranking of us mid-Dharma adepts is different." That makes sense. Shuesanyi thought for a moment and said, "Nowadays, the mid-Dharma adepts of the various sects are all dominated by the third-generation direct disciples. You people are all proud and arrogant, and I'm sure you all want to fight amongst yourselves. However, if you hunt Mara within the hunting grounds, it's either too slow or too dangerous. However, if a few of you join forces to harass Mara's army on the periphery of the battlefield, there will be plenty of opportunities to hunt for battle merits. Secondly, there will be a few sects to hold back, and there won't be any high-level Mara sweeping the periphery on a large scale. As long as you control the pace, it's a shortcut to earning battle merits." Martial Uncle Shue's eyes are like a torch. Xie Tianyang immediately followed up with a flattering remark. "Speaking of the mid-Dharma battle merit ranking this time, because it's a competition between the most outstanding third-generation direct disciples of each sect, I've heard that it's highly valued by all the sections. Now that the few of you are relying on your sects to fight against Mara's army, you should have an advantage over the practitioners who are sweeping the periphery. How is it? What's the current situation of your rankings?" Su Jin laughed bitterly and said, "Second brother is currently in second place, with 127 battle merits. Little Six is currently in 5th place, with 112 battle merits. Disciple is the worst, unable to even make it into the top 10, with only 94 battle merits, ranking 12th. Among the top 50 mid-Dharma battle merit rankings, there are a total of 5 disciples from our sect on the list. The competition is really intense. From 2nd place to 12th place, there's only a difference of 33 points between the 11 of them, which is an average difference of 1 blood azura. However, for our sect to be able to occupy 5 out of the 50 disciples on the list, it's still not bad. After all, out of the 6 direct disciples of our sect, only 3 of you are here. Now that the calamity of Mara has arrived, it's also the time for the elite disciples of the various sects in the world of practitioners to surge. If the other 2 disciples on the list can maintain their positions on the battle merit rankings, after the opening of the 7th Patriarch's altar, our sect will have to reward them handsomely." Hao Xiqing and Laozu were obviously quite satisfied with Ziyang Palace's current results, even though this was only the beginning. Ziyang Palace had repeatedly fought against Mara's army. Mengshui and Laozu, however, asked, "What's the ranking of the North Sea disciple who was lucky enough to kill the Azura? I'm sure Mingjia has surpassed him by now. Who's in 1st place now, and how many battle merits do they have?" Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's expressions turned strange for a moment. In the end, it was Xie Tianyang who said, "Uncle Master, how do you know that second brother has definitely surpassed Brother Liu?" Mengshui glared at him and said, "He's just a North Sea disciple. Even if he's outstanding, how strong can he be? How can he still be in 1st place with the full support of our sect?" Fan Mingjia was his favorite disciple, and Mengshui was very confident in his disciple. Su Jin smiled bitterly and said, "That's right. He's in 1st place. In the past half a month, he didn't make a move. 3 days ago, his points suddenly started rising, and he's now at 139 points. Second brother is still 12 points behind him. Meng Shui and Lao Zu's expression changed. They seemed to be in disbelief, but they still tried to ask, is he really that powerful? Xie Tianyang and Su Jin nodded in unison. At the side, Shui Sanyi and Lao Zu said, 3 days ago? Wasn't that when Mara's army suddenly retreated? This Lu Tianping and Little Six have been through life and death together. He also has a good relationship with Little San. Previously, when Jinling's encampment was in a tight spot, the two of you ran over to help. Do you think the abnormalities of Mara's army outside the encampment were caused by him? Chapter 1300. This time, the Ziyang Palace's western camp is going to be in trouble. Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu were lying in ambush on a hillside. They held their breaths and retracted all of their auras as they looked at the Mara's army gathering at the foot of the hill about 10 miles away. Reinforcements. Although Yin Tianchu did not have Lu Ping's 3 pure true eyes or his insane divine will, he could still roughly see what was happening about 10 miles away. Lu Ping nodded and said, "It seems that our continuous harassment and the conflict between the Dharma adepts and the Mara over the past 3 days have attracted the attention of the high-level Mara. An Azura has come with 3 or 4 Jade Mara and close to 10 Blood Mara as reinforcements." Yin Tianchu asked curiously, "There is no way that the Ziyang Palace would not notice such a large-scale mobilization. Mara had always moved in groups. An Azura leading 4 or 5 Jade Mara and 10 Blood Mara would mean that there would be at least 1,000 Mara of various sizes following them. It would be difficult for the Ziyang Palace not to notice such a large-scale mobilization. I'm afraid that the Ziyang Palace really did not notice this time." The green light in Lu Ping's eyes shot out a foot. Yin Tianchu, who was watching from the side, was also amazed. These 10 high-level Mara are not accompanied by a single low-level Mara. Not only that, these 10 or so Mara have come in 2 waves. Each wave has about 7 or 8 Mara. It would be difficult for them to attract the Ziyang Palace's attention. Lu Ping's expression changed. "We have to think of a way to inform the Ziyang Palace. Otherwise, the camp that Brother Xie and the others are at will definitely be at a disadvantage in the upcoming battle. They might even lose the camp on the west side." Just as Lu Ping was paying full attention to Mara's army, Yin Tianchu said, "Are you sure we still have a chance to inform Ziyang Palace?" Lu Ping was taken aback. When he looked in the direction that Yin Tianchu was pointing at, he saw that the Jade Mara that seemed to be patrolling Mara's army had gathered together and were circling around the hillside. The direction they were circling seemed to be where Lu Ping and the others were. He had been discovered. Lu Ping shouted in a low voice, "Let's go." The two of them hid themselves and quickly retreated from the hillside. However, at that moment, a low growl suddenly came from the camp of Mara's army. The Mara that was pretending to be patrolling immediately sped up and chased after the two of them. "Damn it!" Lu Ping cursed fiercely. "There's no need to hide. Run with all your might. There's actually a heavenly demon." Even though Yin Tianchu had always been indifferent, his expression also changed at this moment. The two of them no longer concealed their figures. 2 rays of conveyance lights rose up from the hillside and turned around to fly backward. They wanted to use the mountain range as a cover to get rid of Mo Luo's pursuit. The Jade Mara that had caught up earlier were about to split up and chase after the two of them. Unexpectedly, a low growl came from behind them again. The Jade Mara chased after them for a while before all of them returned. At that moment, the Mara's army at the bottom of the hillside had already set off again. They mightily pounced on the camp again. Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu fled dozens of miles away. Only then did they realize that Mara was not chasing after them. Yin Tianchu asked, "What should we do?" Lu Ping sighed. "If Ziyang Palace is not on guard, I'm afraid this camp will be difficult to protect. However, there is only the pure Yang Laozu overseeing Ziyang Palace's camp. If the disappearance of the 2 Azuras can be ignored by the pure Yang Laozu, the heavenly demons are the focus of the pure Yang cultivators. If the pure Yang cultivators of Ziyang Palace do not notice the disappearance of one of the heavenly demons in Mara's army, it will be a little unreasonable." Yin Tianchu said, "What if the heavenly demons are not the 2 that attacked Ziyang Palace's camp? Lu Ping gasped. It's possible. If that's the case, won't the West camp not even receive reinforcements from Ziyang Palace's camp? The two of them quickly rushed towards the outskirts of the camp on the west side of the Purple Sun Palace. By the time the two of them were over 10 miles away from the camp, they could already hear the earth-shaking sounds of battle from both sides. The Devil Luo army had already surrounded the camp and launched a fierce attack. The 3 late Dharma adepts and 10 mid-Dharma adepts guarding the camp had all arrived at the camp's defensive formation and were engaged in a fierce battle with Mara's army. However, the sudden appearance of 1 Azura and 4 or 5 Jade Mara disrupted the deployment of the Ziyang Palace adepts. In the instant the battle began, one of the mid-Dharma adepts from Ziyang Palace was dead, and one was seriously injured. By the time the entire Ziyang Palace realized that something was wrong, the remaining 10 or so adepts were quickly surrounded by Mara's army and were surrounded by Mara's army. Even if they wanted to retreat to the camp and rely on the formation to defend it, they could no longer do so. Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu tried their best to sneak towards the edge of the battlefield. Only then did they realize that although Ziyang Palace was currently at a disadvantage, they still had the ability to defend themselves. At this time, Mara's army was trying to isolate all the mid and late Dharma adepts who had rushed out of the camp from the camp. This was to prevent Ziyang Palace from hiding in the camp and defending themselves. As for the Sky Demon who had been hiding at the side and had not made a move, it was probably waiting for the right time to give Ziyang Palace a fatal blow. It was to completely destroy this camp that was connected to Ziyang Palace's camp. This way, Mara's army would be able to take advantage of the high ground and launch an even fiercer attack on Ziyang Palace's camp. At this time, Xie Tianyang and Su Jin had already realized that something was wrong when the new reinforcements from Mara's army appeared. Although the two of them were temporarily unable to retreat to the camp, they managed to gather together in time. With a blazing sky sun sword and an ice soft sword, the 2 spirit treasures worked together to block the attacks of a Jade Demon and 3 Jade Shura. However, this time, the situation that the two of them were in was much more serious than the one they had been in during the battle at Shenling. However, the swordsmanship that the two of them were using was clearly a secret combination attack of the Purple Sun Palace. The 2 flying swords were Yang and Yin, one hot and one cold. When the 2 swordsmanship techniques were used, one attacked and one defended, one advanced and one retreated. Although they were at a disadvantage against the 4 Jade Devils, they were still able to hold their ground. Suddenly, there was a cry of pain from the camp. Clearly, a disciple of Ziyang Palace had been injured by the Mara's siege. Then, the two of them realized that a few Blood Mara had left the battle and were surrounding them. It was already difficult for the two of them to resist the siege of 4 Jade Mara. If a few more Blood Mara joined in, the two of them might not be able to handle it. The two of them continued to defend against the Jade Shura's attacks, and at the same time, they tried to move the fight back. They wanted to return to the camp and use the Matrix to defend against the Shura's attacks. But the 4 Jade Shura had clearly noticed what the two of them were trying to do, and their attacks intensified. 2 of the Jade Shura circled behind the two of them to block their retreat. The 3 Blood Mara were the first to rush into the battle, but before they could attack, one of the Blood Shura suddenly screamed and turned around as if to avoid something. However, a short sword had already pierced through its chest, and it was killed in one hit. Chapter 1301. Shapeless Sword Technique. Xie Tianyang shouted, thinking that it was Lu Ping who had come to help. But looking at the short sword, which was only a spirit-nurturing magic treasure, he knew that it was not one of Lu Ping's magic treasures. Sure enough, a black-robed cultivator appeared behind the slain Blood Azura. With a wave of his hand, the dagger magic treasure returned to his hand. Then, the cultivator looked coldly at Xie Tianyang. His black robes fluttered, and his entire person hid in the void again. Xie Tianyang gave Su Jin a look. Both of them breathed a sigh of relief at the same time, but the flying swords in their hands did not relax at all. On the contrary, the 2 spirit treasures cooperated more closely with each other, and their attacks became fiercer, as if they were going to break out of the encirclement. Seeing this, the 4 Jade Mara no longer cared about the black-robed cultivator who had suddenly appeared. Only a few Blood Mara hurriedly wandered around the periphery as if guarding against something, while the four Jade Mara began to block Xie Tianyang and Su Jin with all their might. Although Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's all-out attack had disrupted the rhythm of the four Jade Mara's coordination, the two of them really could not escape the encirclement of the four Jade Mara. But this was enough. With a strange gulp, a sword light rushed up from below like boiling water. Including Xie Tianyang and Su Jin, the four Jade Mara were all included in the sword formation. The boiling sword light continued to spread, scaring away the few blood Mara that came up from all directions. But the black-robed Yin Tianchu's figure disappeared in a flash. Not only did he not avoid the boiling sword light formation, but he also rushed into the formation and was drowned by the boiling sword light in the blink of an eye. Boiling sky sword technique. Jade Demon suddenly realized that his soul-devouring divine art couldn't be used in this strange sword whistle that sounded like boiling water. That earth-shaking sword whistle actually covered up his soul-devouring divine art completely. Without the Soul Devour magic, the Jade Demon's strength was only slightly stronger than a Blood Shura. The sword light around it surged up, and in a moment, the Jade Demon let out a shrill roar. Together with the accompanying spiritual treasure in its hand, it was swallowed by the sword light, leaving only a black soul devourer that gradually dissipated in the boiling sword light. Seepage sword technique. Lu Ping had already cultivated this supreme sword technique to the level where he could use it as he pleased. He could change the four basic magic at any time in the process of using the supreme sword technique to adapt to the situation. A figure slowly condensed in the sword formation. Lu Ping smiled at the sword light formation that was still boiling around him. He did not expect that Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's strength had also reached such a level. If Yin Tianchu had not secretly expelled the Blood Mara, and the two of them had joined forces to stop the four Jade Mara, Lu Ping would not have been able to use this supreme sword technique like a sneak attack to trap the four Jade Mara in the sword formation. When Lu Ping's sword formation included Xie Tianyang and Su Jin, the two of them seemed to have expected this. Seeing that the sword light around them was only attacking the Jade Mara in front of them, and that it did not affect them at all, they could not help but be amazed that Lu Ping could control such a powerful supreme sword technique so well. But at this time, the two of them had to suppress their shock, and each of them rushed towards the two Jade Shuras. At this time, the four Jade Mara had been scattered by Lu Ping's supreme sword technique, and it was a good time to take them down one by one. The other Jade Shura had just regained its footing under the sword formation when a black shadow attacked it. A short sword suddenly appeared 3 feet in front of the Jade Shura. Although the Jade Shura tried to dodge, its protection god powers were still pierced. The sword pierced half a foot into its body, and the Jade Shura's companion spirit treasure knocked it away. A palm strangely appeared in midair, just in time to grab the flying dagger magic treasure, and then disappeared. But when the Jade Shura used the companion spirit treasure to smash the sword light where the hand had appeared, it did not find anything. The Jade Shura was shocked, and it seemed to think of something. Its feet flashed, and when it was about to leave where it had been, a short needle that was about a foot long appeared behind the Jade Shura. Although the Jade Shura had a protection god power around her, the god powers and spells were like broken cups in front of the short needle. They made a cracking sound, and the protective god powers around the Jade Shura were pierced like rotten wood. The needle pierced right through the Jade Shura's back. The Taishian thorn that Lu Ping had given to Yin Tianchu was now a true disaster spirit treasure in Yin Tianchu's hands. Clearly, Yin Tianchu's power had increased over the years, and it wasn't just in terms of his cultivation. The Jade Shura looked at the half of the thorn that was sticking out of her chest in disbelief. Her whole body was starting to crack as her life force drained away. She turned into a thick spirit power that evaporated into the air. Only the Taishian thorn was left floating in the air, shining with a sharp light. The sword shadows dissipated, and Yin Tianchu's figure calmly walked out from behind the sword shadows. The moment he appeared, the supreme mystery thorn let out a soft cry, and instantly flew back into Yin Tianchu's body, disappearing without a trace. At this time, the sky full of sword lights started to gather together. They gathered around the two flying swords that were floating around Lu Ping. Lu Ping, Xie Tianyang, and Su Jin slowly appeared in the air. Su Jin bowed to Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu. He smiled and said, "Thank you, Brother Lu, for helping us. If you hadn't, we would have been in big trouble. By the way, is this a cultivator from your faction?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "You don't have to be so polite. This is Yin Tianchu from our faction." Xie Tianyang and Su Jin greeted each other as Brother Yin. Yin Tianchu only nodded silently in return. Su Jin and Xie Tianyang did not mind. They had seen all kinds of strange people in the world of cultivation, and it was easy to offend them by deliberately chasing after small details. Xie Tianyang said, "I didn't expect you to have someone like Brother Yin, besides Brother Lu. Jinling has brought a big surprise to the world of cultivation." Su Jin was being honest. He said, "Surprise is good enough, but it's hard to say whether it's good or not." The four of them met each other in a hurry. Lu Ping said, "This is not a good place to talk. Brother Su, Brother Xie, the situation in your faction is not good. Has your pure young Laozu arrived?" Su Jin didn't suspect anything. He said, "It's not good. There's an Azura in Mara's army. The three martial uncles and martial granduncle are doing their best to delay, but they won't be able to hold on for long. I'm afraid we can't count on the reinforcements from the encampment. There are two skyscraping demons there. Our Pure Yang cultivator, Jia Xiuqing, and Wuxing School's Pure Yang cultivator, Mu Yi Laozu, both have to block the two skyscraping demons. Naturally, they won't be able to do anything else." At this time, Xie Tianyang saw that Lu Ping's expression was getting worse when he heard that the Pure Yang cultivator from Ziyang Palace was busy. Xie Tianyang couldn't help but ask, "Brother Lu, is there something wrong?" Su Jin also noticed that Lu Ping's expression was getting worse. He couldn't help but stop talking. However, from Lu Ping's low voice, he received a piece of shocking news. "Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. There's a skyscraping demon hiding in Mara's army." "What? That's impossible." Xie Tianyang and Su Jin shouted almost at the same time. However, their eyes were dyed with a layer of deep worry. Previously, they had only reacted subconsciously. The news brought by Lu Ping was too despairing. However, the two of them knew that Lu Ping would never lie to them about this matter. Previously, after the four of them joined forces to kill the four Jade Mara, the high-level Mara in the surrounding area had already fled, leaving only the small Mara that the four of them casually killed as they flew. Previously, Su Jin and Xie Tianyang had wanted to bring two strong reinforcements to the cultivators of Ziyang Palace who were surrounded by Mara. Now, the two of them only wanted to inform the three great cultivators of Ziyang Palace who were doing their best to resist the Azuras. Most of the cultivators of Ziyang Palace who could rush out of the camp to fight were at least at the mid-Dharma stage. However, the sudden appearance of reinforcements from Mara's army had broken the connection between them, and they were now in a situation where they were fighting on their own. This battlefield affected the void within a radius of nearly 100 miles. Although the four of them attacked everywhere, there were only a few cultivators of Ziyang Palace, and there were no traces of the great cultivators at all. The four of them could not help but feel anxious. If the three great cultivators stationed at the campsite could not return in time to defend the campsite, then once the heavenly demons appeared, the entire Purple Sun Palace would definitely be defeated. Furthermore, even if the three great cultivators could return in time, with the help of the heavenly demons, the campsite would only be able to delay the invasion of the heavenly demons. Where did this heavenly demon come from? If this heavenly demon really existed, it was definitely not one of the two heavenly demons that attacked the Purple Sun Palace's encampment at the mountain pass. Instead, it was a new reinforcement from the Devil Luo army. However, how did this heavenly demon manage to sneak into the Devil Luo army without being discovered by the two pure young experts of the Purple Sun Palace? Xie Tianyang suddenly stopped and said seriously, "No, I'm afraid it's too late if this goes on. Brother Lu, have you really found traces of the heavenly demon?" Yin Tianchu's face darkened. Beside him, Lu Ping hurriedly pulled him back and said, "It's not that we've found traces of the heavenly demon, but that the heavenly demon is indeed hiding in this Mara's army." Xie Tianyang nodded and said, "Brother Lu, please don't blame me. This is a serious matter, so I have to be careful." With that, Xie Tianyang suddenly roared into the sky. A buzzing sound came from the thin water-flowing sword that was circling around Lu Ping. These two flying swords were responding to Xie Tianyang's long roar. Lu Ping's divine sense even sensed a rich sword qi in Xie Tianyang's long roar. This long roar must be a kind of magical power that was derived from swordsmanship. Just as Xie Tianyang let out a long roar, Su Jin, who was beside him, also roared into the sky. Their roars resonated with each other, and suddenly, their roars reached a higher level. Lu Ping's divine sense seemed to have caught a strange vibration in the space. It seemed that this long roar could resonate with something, so that it could be used to transmit some kind of message. This must be a secret technique of the Purple Sun Palace. A look of lingering fear flashed across their faces as they said, "I didn't expect the consumption to be so great. However, I think the martial uncles and martial granduncles should have already received the news. I can only hope that our sect's Laozu in the encampment at the mountain pass can spare some time to help. Otherwise, we can only delay for a while. With the cooperation of the heavenly demons, Azura's strength will definitely increase. Even if our encampment has defensive arrays, it will not be able to stop the heavenly demons." At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know if the elders of Purple Sun Palace have received the news. However, I know that Mara's army has received the news. At the very least, the few of us are in trouble." The cold ice soft sword behind Su Jin shook and said, "How many Jade Mara have come?" Although the Purple Sun sky-piercing howl has consumed a lot of energy, the drawbacks will only appear later. At this time, our battle strength has not decreased much. Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "It's not Jade Mara, it's Azura." Just as Lu Ping's voice fell, a powerful roar suddenly came from the Mara's army in the distance. Mara's army suddenly spread out and opened up a path. An Azura turned into a golden light. With an unparalleled sharp aura, it directly broke through the void and killed its way to the four of them. Just as the Azura descended, four consecutive blade lights seemed to pass through the void at the same time and directly appeared 3 feet in front of the four of them, slashing towards their heads. When the Mara's army saw the Azura's attack, they immediately cheered and made a ruckus. The Mara's army, which was previously frightened by the four of them and did not dare to advance, immediately swarmed forward and blocked the four's escape route from all directions. Among them, there was no lack of blood Mara patrolling the surroundings. If the four of them tried to escape, they would definitely be obstructed. "Let's fight." The thin water-flowing sword flew out, and the flying chain slash continuously pierced the golden blade lights in front of him. At the same time, he broke the Azura's attack and was also sent flying more than 10 feet back. Lu Ping fiercely suppressed the shock in his heart. At this moment, Lu Ping finally understood how powerful an Azura at its peak was. The Azura that Lu Ping had killed by a fluke previously was not at its full strength. At the very least, Lin Yu Laozu's sneak attack had destroyed 70% of the Azura's combat power. The Azura's power was far beyond that of late Dharma adepts. During the Mara's disaster, there were very few great adepts who could fight against an Azura alone. Even the great adepts of the Ziyang Palace could only fight against an Azura and buy time. Even if there were 2 great adepts who were facing an Azura, they would not fight it head-on. In the instant that Lu Ping pierced through the golden blade lights, the sword of the true spirit had already flown up from behind Lu Ping. In the midst of the bluish-purple auspicious clouds, the sword of the true spirit had already transformed into a dragon that pounced towards the Azura. At this moment, there was no way out other than to charge forward bravely. Xie Tianyang and Su Jin had also blocked the Azura's attack. However, looking at their slightly disheveled expressions, it was obvious that they were not as relaxed as Lu Ping was. The 3 of them exchanged glances and already knew that today's matter would not end well. As for Yin Tianchu, he had already disappeared the moment the blade lights appeared. Vaguely, Lu Ping seemed to have sensed that Yin Tianchu was already hiding behind him, waiting for the moment that the Azura revealed an opening under the joint attack of the 3 of them to deliver a fatal blow. Chapter 1302. The moment the Azura appeared, a cold and ferocious aura suddenly rose from within Mara's army. In an instant, This aura swept through the entire battlefield like a cold wind with a blade. Mara's army was suddenly shaken, while the cultivators of Ziyang Palace were simultaneously affected by this cold soul-devouring spell. The heavenly demon hidden within Mara's army finally attacked. The instant it attacked, it targeted all the cultivators of Ziyang Palace in the camp. Several cries of shock and even miserable cries came from all directions. It was clear that with the help of the heavenly demon's strange spell, the cultivators of Ziyang Palace were inevitably at a great disadvantage. Even Xie Tianyang and Su Jin, who were facing off against the Azura, hesitated for a moment. In Tianchu, who was hiding behind Lu Ping, could no longer maintain his invisibility spell and had no choice but to reveal himself from the void. Among the four of them, only Lu Ping's spiritual force was strong enough. With the protection of the Jade Phosphorus Soul Fire and the Cloud Sail, he was able to remain unscathed under the heavenly demon's sudden attack. However, at this moment, the Azura seized the opportunity to attack again. In Tianchu was still behind Lu Ping, but Lu Ping did not have the time to warn the other two. The Sword of True Spirit instantly turned into a bolt of lightning and struck the Azura's head. At the same time, Lu Ping's hands formed a seal, but he did not even chant an incantation. A dark cloud had already gathered in the sky. Immediately after, the bolt of lightning that struck first exploded with a loud bang, startling Xie Tianyang and the other two. At the same time, the bolts of Water Divine Lightning had already combined with the Thunderclap Sword technique to block the Azura's surprise attack. However, Lu Ping's mind was shaken by the Azura's counterattack. His qi and blood churned and blood seeped out from his nose. In reality, from the moment Xie Tianyang and the other two were attacked by the heavenly demon soul devouring, to when Lu Ping could use the Water Divine Lightning to barely resolve the Azura's attack, only a split second had passed. Xie Tianyang and the other two had escaped from the heavenly demon's concealment and hurriedly lent a helping hand. At the same time, they felt ashamed, but Lu Ping's internal organs were still injured. Fortunately, Lu Ping's body had been constantly nourished and was far stronger than ordinary people. Although this kind of injury was troublesome, it was not enough to affect his strength in a short period of time. This time, Xie Tianyang and Su Jin joined forces to fight the Azura head-on. Previously, Lu Ping had seen the two of them performing a joint attack secret technique. Although they could not completely resist the Azura's head-on attack, with Lu Ping fighting from the side, he would help the two of them and at the same time, fill in the gaps. Every time the Azura's attack was finally resolved, it made the Azura even more furious. At this time, Tianchu was hiding on the side, waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack, so the Azura had to divert part of its attention to guard against him. Under the four of them joining forces, they could actually fight evenly with one Azura, attacking and defending. Even when the big and small Mara came forward to harass them, Lu Ping still had the strength to release two flying swords of spiritual treasures to clear the periphery of the battle for the four of them. Even when the Blood Mara appeared, Lu Xiaoping's avatar would come out to stop it. "Evil creature, how dare you!" A fierce roar rang out from the Emo Luo army. Lu Ping could even hear the murderous aura hidden in the roar, and he could even tell that there was no return. It's Grandmaster Hao Xiqing. Previously, the appearance of the Azura's reinforcements in Mara's army had already caused the Purple Sun Palace cultivators stationed at the camp to be badly battered. Now, the appearance of the heavenly demon made the situation even more dangerous. If not for Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's earth-shattering roar, the three great cultivators stationed at the camp would have already broken into the camp before they discovered the heavenly demon. However, so what? Facing a heavenly demon and a great cultivator head-on, the only thing they could fight for Purple Sun Palace was not victory. They could only fight for time to escape. When Hao Xiqing and Lao Zhu charged towards the heavenly demon, they already knew their mission. They hoped to sacrifice themselves in exchange for a few more Purple Sun Palace cultivators escaping from the torrent of Mara's army. As for the other two great cultivators, they were probably still entangled with the other two Azuras. This was because Lu Ping, Xie Tianyang, and Su Jin were blocking one of the Azuras. Otherwise, even if the Purple Sun Palace's great cultivators risked their lives to block the heavenly demon, it would be the best time for the Azura to completely crush Purple Sun Palace's resistance. Sure enough, when Hao Xiqing and Laozu charged towards the heavenly demon, Meng Shui and Laozu's deep roar came from the sky again. All Purple Sun Palace disciples, return to the camp. Gather your strength and prepare to break out. Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's Purple Sun sky-piercing howl was not only used to inform the Purple Sun Palace cultivators near the camp, but also to inform the camp at the mountain pass that was over 50 kilometers away. However, Meng Shui and Laozu's roar directly shattered Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's final fantasies. It was impossible for Purple Sun Palace's mountain pass to send reinforcements. The heavenly demon and Azura that appeared in Mara's army were indeed a new force. Just as the camp at the west side of Purple Sun Palace was in a chaotic battle, a fierce battle was also taking place at the mountain pass camp of Purple Sun Palace. However, the two pure yang cultivators guarding the camp, Jia Xiuqing Laozu from Purple Sun Palace and Mu Lingzi Muyi Laozu from Wuxing School, were constantly paying attention to the situation outside the camp. However, both of them had a strange expression on their faces. Brother Jia, this situation looks a little strange. Why haven't the two heavenly demons made a move yet? Muyi Laozu had rushed to support Purple Sun Palace after it was attacked by Mara. In the past few days, he had joined forces with Jia Xiuqing and Laozu to repel the attacks of the two heavenly demons in Mara's army several times. If the two heavenly demons were not always surrounded by high-level cultivators and countless Mara of various sizes, the two Laozu would have probably killed the two heavenly demons long ago. At this time, the two of them admired Eighth Sister Zhu's ruthlessness even more. Back then, she had run into Mara's army to assassinate a heavenly demon. She had really risked her life. After the incident, it was said that even the highest-ranking alchemy grandmaster in the Liu family shook his head after seeing her injuries and said that she was lucky to maintain her pure yang cultivation. It would probably take decades for her to recover. Jia Xiuqing Laozu also felt that something was wrong, but he didn't know where it was. He pondered for a moment and said, could it be that the two heavenly demons have run to the camps on the two sides? Muyi Laozu was stunned for a moment and said with a smile, it can't be. The aura of the two heavenly demons has been locked on by us. Although it's not easy for us to kill them, it's impossible for these two beasts to avoid our detection. Jia Xiuqing Laozu's expression softened, and he said, that's true. Being overly concerned makes one confused. I've made a fool of myself in front of Mu Gu. After saying that, Jia Xiuqing Laozu seemed to have thought of something that made him angry again. He snorted coldly and said, if it wasn't for the Western Wilderness Demon Clan and the Northern Ice Plains Multicolored Tiger Clan's sudden attack, causing great losses to our sect and taking up too much of our sect's energy in the Northwest, we wouldn't have sent only the old man for this battle of the Nine Mysteries Tower. An imperceptible look flashed across the face of Konoha's ancestor as he asked curiously, speaking of which, it is quite strange. Did the monster race outside the Northwest Central region go crazy? Why did they suddenly join hands and even annihilate the Western Wasteland Temple? Jia Xiuqing Laozu's face flashed with anger, and he said, they're just taking advantage of the situation. After the calamity of Mara is over, our sect will definitely reorganize the Demon Clan in the Western Wilderness and Northern Ice Plains. We'll see what kind of courage they've eaten to dare to attack our Purple Sun Palace, or if there's some mastermind behind this. Muyi Laozu's eyes flickered and a trace of worry flashed across his face. He changed the topic and said, there shouldn't be any problems with the two camps on the two sides of the encampment, right? Jia Xiuqing Laozu said, there shouldn't be any problems if they focus on defense. At the very least, they can rely on the defensive formations of the camps to block the attack of one or two Azuras. The people in charge of the two camps are all first-generation cultivators of our sect. They've experienced many battles of life and death. There shouldn't be any major mistakes. Muyi Laozu's expression was a little envious as he said, your sect is indeed worthy of being the leader of the 5 great holy lands of the Central Plains. Even when fighting on two sides, you can still have such a strong force. Jia Xiuqing Laozu looked at Muyi Laozu with a faint smile and said, back then, Wuxing School was no weaker than our sect and Purple Sun Palace. Some time ago, if you had completely merged the Yulon River and Qingming River through the water transformation talisman, I'm afraid it wouldn't take long for your sect to return to the glory of Wuxing School. Muyi Laozu's expression changed. In the end, he smiled bitterly and said, Brother Jia, you must be joking. Our sect failed at the last moment and made a fool of itself. Jia Xiuqing smiled and didn't say anything. In the Battle of Luo Xian Mountain, Wuxing School suffered a double loss. If it weren't for the 9 mystical towers' emergency call for reinforcements from various sects of the human race, as one of the 5 great holy lands of the Central Plains, Wuxing School would have been suppressed by the entire cultivation world of the Central Plains. Even so, after the defeat of Luo Xian Mountain, Wuxing School took the initiative to shrink its sphere of influence. This time, when the Purple Sun Palace was attacked, Muyi Laozu even took the initiative to help. Jia Xiuqing and Laozu naturally knew what Muyi was up to. Just as the two were testing each other, a low whistle suddenly came from Jia Xiuqing Laozu's waist. Jia Xiuqing Laozu's smile immediately froze on his face. He reached out and touched his waist. A nameplate made of ancient jade was trembling slightly. The whistle made by Xie Tianyang and Su Jin came from the trembling nameplate. Although the sound was much lower, it was very clear in the quiet room. Purple sun sky breaking whistle? Muyi Laozu exclaimed and looked at Jia Xiuqing Laozu with an uncertain expression. Chapter 1303. Muye's ancestor naturally recognized this method of communication from the Purple Sun Palace and knew what it meant for the Purple Sun Palace. It's the camp on the west side. Oh no, damn it. Did the heavenly demons really go there? Mugu. Without waiting for Jia Xiuqing Laozu to finish speaking, Muyi Laozu said, Brother Jia, go ahead and make arrangements. I will do my best. Jia Xiuqing nodded solemnly. Thank you. Purple Sun Palace will definitely repay Wuxing School's request for help. Muyi Laozu had been waiting for this sentence. He smiled and was about to say something, but before he could speak, the 2 pure young cultivators' expressions changed. How is this possible? The 2 heavenly demons are still here. What exactly happened at the west side camp? The 2 pure young cultivators looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. However, Jia Xiuqing Laozu's gaze was now filled with worry and anger. The 2 of them no longer cared about the camp on the west side. They hurriedly flew out. At the instant the purple sun whistled through the air, the auras of the 2 sky fiends that had been lingering outside the Purple Sun Palace encampment suddenly surged. They charged straight for the encampment. Although the west side camp was important, the camp where the camp was located was the foundation of Purple Sun Palace. Jia Xiuqing originally thought that the 2 heavenly demons had used some secret divine ability to strip off their auras to deceive the 2 pure young cultivators, so they did not directly participate in the battle. Instead, they lingered outside the battlefield with the intention of restraining the 2 pure young cultivators. Their real bodies had already run to the west side. Unexpectedly, the 2 heavenly demons never disappeared. Moreover, they suddenly attacked when Jia Xiuqing and Laozu received a call for help from the west side camp. It was obvious that they wanted to restrain the 2 pure young cultivators and prevent them from helping. However, when the 2 pure young cultivators had no choice but to take action to stop the 2 pure young cultivators, Jia Xiuqing Laozu ordered the Purple Sun Palace cultivators in the encampment to send out a group of reinforcements in an attempt to rush out of the encampment and rush to the west side of the camp. However, the demonic Luo army seemed to have expected Purple Sun Palace to do this at this moment. They suddenly strengthened their attacks on Purple Sun Palace's encampment. Countless demonic Luo pounced towards the encampment one after another, attacking it without fear of death. Under the leadership of 2 great adepts, the reinforcements from the Ziyang Palace finally managed to break through the encirclement. 6 or 7 of them managed to escape, but the price they paid was the death of a mid-Dharma adept and 2 early Dharma adepts, as well as the injuries of several Dharma adepts. Martial Granduncle Hao won't be able to hold on for long. Su Jin and Xie Tianyang muttered to Xie Tianyang as they blocked the Azura's attack with Lu Ping's help. They seemed to have made up their minds about something. Up until now, how Siqing Laozu and the heavenly demon had only been entangled for less than 5 minutes. However, the heavenly demon's soul-devouring shockwave was becoming more and more frequent. Clearly, the situation on Hao Siqing Laozu's side was getting worse. Lu Ping decisively swung the cloud sail. Auspicious clouds filled the surroundings of the battle, blocking the heavenly demon's soul-devouring technique. Although Lu Ping was not afraid, the soul-devouring technique had a huge impact on the other three, especially Yin Tianchu, who was having a hard time resisting it. From time to time, he would be forced to reveal himself due to the secret technique. Half of Yin Tianchu's strength lay in the art of concealment. Now that he was exposed, he had lost several opportunities to restrain the Azura. On the contrary, the Azura had seized the opportunity to beat him up. If it weren't for Lu Ping's help, Yin Tianchu would have been heavily injured by the Azura. Just as Su Jin finished speaking, the two of them seemed to have a tacit understanding. The swordplay in their hands immediately changed. The blazing celestial sun sword's flickering sword light condensed into a ball of fire in mid-air. Then, it transformed into a blazing white ball of light. Endless heat was emitted from the ball of light, but when it was used on the Azura's body, it turned into streaks of sword chi. On the other hand, Su Jin's cold ice silk sword was the exact opposite. Streaks of cold light also condensed, but the light that condensed was much gentler. Compared to the explosion of the blazing celestial sun sword, the sword light that Su Jin had condensed was more like a bright moon. The sword techniques that the two of them had unleashed were undoubtedly supreme sword techniques that were secretly passed down in Ziyang Palace. The moment these two completely opposite supreme sword techniques were successfully unleashed, they fused once again under Lu Ping's shocked gaze, forming a brand new supreme sword technique. It was originally two supreme sword techniques. What kind of power would it have when they fused again? Just the thought of this power made Lu Ping shudder. He thought of the legends of Ziyang Palace's sword techniques in the cultivation world. Were the two of them unleashing the heaven-opening sword technique that Zhao Daoren had personally left behind? Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's actions did not only shock Lu Ping, but also the Azura in front of him. It had clearly realized the power of the sword technique that the two of them had unleashed together. The companion numinous treasure in its hand radiated with rainbow light as it attacked the two of them even more fiercely. However, at this moment, Lu Ping also knew that the battle between the two of them had reached a critical moment. The success or failure depended on whether Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's heaven-opening sword technique could severely injure the Azura in front of him. Therefore, he could not let the Azura destroy the sword technique that the two of them were brewing. A huge white jade lotus flower bloomed under Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's feet. As the flower expanded, the Azura's attack was gradually pushed out of the lotus. The sword of true spirit in Lu Ping's hand shook, and the tip of the sword vibrated rapidly. Countless sword chi cut through the void and formed 3 battle words in the air. Battle, battle, battle. Lu Ping had already cast the heaven-opening sword technique that he had comprehended from Zhao Daoren's handwriting. The 3 battle words suddenly turned into 3 flood dragons that were the same as the Dharma in Lu Ping's heart space. They roared and rushed towards the Azura. Unlike Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's heaven-opening sword art, Lu Ping's heaven-opening sword art might not be as powerful as Xie Tianyang's heaven-opening sword art, but it was undoubtedly faster and more flexible. The 3 sword light flood dragons flew up and down and surrounded the Azura, forcing the Azura to struggle to escape from Lu Ping's sword technique. One of the flood dragons was torn to pieces by the Azura in just a moment. However, this was enough. A blazing sun and a luminous moon coexisted in the air in such a strange way, and then they both fell towards Azura. No matter how Azura dodged, he could not escape from the 2 supreme sword techniques and divine abilities that coexisted with each other. A shrill and crazy roar suddenly came from the suddenly blossoming light. When the light dissipated, the Azura's miserable state made Lu Ping involuntarily suck in a breath of cold air. There were dozens of wounds on the Azura's body. What made Lu Ping even more shocked was that the spiritual treasure in the Azura's hand was already densely covered in cracks. The flying swords in the hands of Xie Tianyang and Su Jin were only first tribulation spiritual treasures. Chapter 1304. Although Azura's primordial spirit treasure was not a true three-tribulation pure yang spirit treasure, it was still much stronger than a two-tribulation spirit treasure. But even so, under the combination of Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's supreme swordsmanship, it was almost crushed. Lu Ping was secretly shocked. The world's #1 sword sect was indeed not for nothing. If Lu Ping was to take on this level of sword technique, he would have no other way but to use the pure yang spiritual treasure to cut it in half. Although Lu Ping was overwhelmed by the power of this sword technique, he did not dare to be careless. Xie Tianyang and Su Jin had joined forces to severely injure the Azura. He could not miss this opportunity. Otherwise, if the Azura turned to escape, it would not be easy to stop him. The sword of true spirit hummed, and countless sword shadows peeled off from Emoli's body. Like piranhas smelling blood in the water, they swarmed forward. Under the siege of the great technique, the seeping sword technique, the Azura's possibility of escape was completely limited. Lu Ping's attack was timely. He did not give the Azura, who was under the attack of Xie Tianyang and Su Jin, a chance to breathe. Amidst the crazy roar, there was only a crisp cracking sound. Under the strangulation of the sword of true spirit, Emoli, the Azura's companion spiritual treasure, which was already riddled with scars, finally could not bear the burden and completely turned into a pile of fragments. Without the companion spiritual treasure, the Azura's strength was only comparable to that of an experienced great cultivator. How could it be a match for Lu Ping and the others? The Azura had already sensed its situation the moment the companion spiritual treasure shattered. It pushed with one hand, and the shattered companion's spiritual treasure scattered like a rain of flowers. It forcibly smashed a large hole in Lu Ping's seeping sword light. Without waiting for Lu Ping to cover up this opening, the Azura had already broken out of the sword light cage. However, just as the Azura rushed out of the sword light cage and breathed a sigh of relief, a short sword had already pierced through the void and stabbed straight at its face. Azura turned pale with fright and had no choice but to raise his palm to block. Ignoring the sharp pain of his palm being pierced, Azura wanted to turn into a beam of light. Unexpectedly, before the beam of light could rise up, it was like a snake that had been cut 7 inches deep, tumbling in midair and falling to the ground. The Azura fell from midair and turned around to point a finger behind it. A golden spot of light made a chi-chi sound in midair as it pierced through the void. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly pushed the air, and Yin Tianchu staggered out of the void. The golden spot of light that was originally aimed at his chest had directly pierced through his shoulder. Even though Yin Tianchu's face had never changed for 10,000 years, he could not help but be distorted by the intense pain. At this moment, Xie Tianyang and Su Jin had temporarily recovered from the huge loss caused by the supreme divine power fusion. The two of them rushed forward to kill this Azura, but they saw a short needle piercing into the Azura's chest. The Azura's body that fell from midair had already begun to slowly disintegrate into clouds of dense spirit chi that scattered in midair. Yin Tianchu's expression kept changing, and the aura around his body fluctuated. Lu Ping stepped forward and asked, "How is it?" Yin Tianchu glanced at Lu Ping, but did not speak. Lu Ping slapped his palm on Yin Tianchu's back, and an extremely strong quintessential essence flowed into Yin Tianchu's blood like seawater flowing backwards after a high tide. It clustered around Yin Tianchu's own essence and flowed towards the wound on his shoulder. Puchi. An arrow of blood flashing with golden light shot out from both sides of the wound on Yin Tianchu's shoulder. Yin Tianchu's face suddenly turned pale, but his expression relaxed greatly. Yin Tianchu took a deep breath and circulated the quintessential essence in his body. His pale face turned slightly rosy. He stretched out his hand, and the supreme mystery thorn returned to his palm. He then nodded at Lu Ping. Su Jin's expression was still a little anxious as he said, "There's no time to lose. I hope the two of you can lend us a hand and help our sect's cultivators return to the camp." Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu nodded, but before Su Jin could thank them, a loud bang and an ear-piercing roar came from behind, followed by a huge wave of quintessential essence. Su Jin's face suddenly turned pale, and Xie Tianyang's eyes were bloodshot. With a roar, he rushed out with his sword. Su Jin seemed to have expected Xie Tianyang to do this. He reached out and grabbed Xie Tianyang tightly, and his whole body was dragged in midair for dozens of feet. Let go, let go. Sixth brother, Martial Granduncle, is already dead. Dead. What's the point of going over now? Lu Ping stepped forward and grabbed Xie Tianyang, saying, Brother Xie, the Sky Demon has been injured by your sect senior's self-destruction, but his strength is still there. There are also a large number of high-grade Mara surrounding him. We are no match for him. Now we can only retreat and try our best to protect the lives of your sect's cultivators. As soon as Lu Ping's voice fell, they heard Ming Shui Laozu's sorrowful voice. Ziyang Palace's people, retreat. Everyone retreat. Xie Tianyang's eyes finally regained clarity. Seeing that Lu Ping and Su Jin were still holding him back, he suddenly roared. His body flickered in midair, and he had already killed his way into Mara's army that was hundreds of feet away. However, it seemed that he was rushing towards the battle near the camp. Su Jin and Lu Ping also took action and began to rescue the cultivators of Ziyang Palace who were surrounded by Mara's army. Due to the injury on his shoulder, In Tianchu did not take action alone. Instead, he continued to follow behind Lu Ping, and from time to time, he would kill the Mara who had been forced by Lu Ping's attacks. Lu Ping was rushing to rescue the cultivators. The Sword of True Spirit transformed into layers of waves and maintained a tyrannical pressure, defeating the obstructions of Mara's army. However, in order to buy time, he did not deliberately kill the defeated Mara. At this moment, In Tianchu, who was hiding beside Lu Ping and had mastered the invisible sword technique, naturally had more opportunities to kill the defeated Mara. However, just as Lu Ping was about to rescue the second trapped cultivator of Ziyang Palace, a long howl rang out and half the sky was covered by an orange-red light. The cultivator that Lu Ping had rescued had a dazed expression on his face. He subconsciously muttered to himself, "It's over. The defensive array of the camp has been destroyed. Mara's army has already broken into the camp. How could a heavenly demon appear? Where did this heavenly demon come from?" Lu Ping frowned and looked at the surrounding Mara's army, which was slowly surrounding him but did not dare to attack. Once a high-level Mara arrived, Lu Ping had no doubt that the Mara's army would surge forward like a tidal wave. Then, he and the others would fall into a heavy siege. No, I have to kill my way back. The cultivator from Ziyang Palace brought out a half-moon-shaped magic treasure, and purple-colored lightning bolts flashed out. Once again, he charged into the encirclement of Mara's army. Surprisingly, the cultivator from Ziyang Palace did not bring out his flying sword. Clearly, he was not a sword cultivator. Additionally, he cultivated a rare lightning-type magic technique. Lu Ping did not do anything to stop him. Since the camp had been destroyed, given the strength of Mara's army, Ziyang Palace's defeat was a foregone conclusion. At that very moment, the battlefield had descended into a chaotic melee. For Lu Ping, breaking out of the encirclement was the same. As long as he did not attract the attention of the heavenly demons and Asuras, as long as he did not get entangled by a high number of high-level Mara, Lu Ping would not fear the encirclement of the Mara army. Not to mention, Lu Ping was not alone. Although In Tianchu was wounded, he was still strong. By joining forces, the two of them did not fear the encirclement of Mara's army. Following the complete victory of the human cultivators in the battle at Jinling's camp and the battle at South Sea Talisman Pavilion's camp, another shocking piece of news came from the battlefield at Nine Profound Tower. A great victory came from the battlefield where the Yuan family was stationed. Mara's army, which had attacked the Yuan family's camp, was suddenly defeated by a sneak attack from the Yuan family. During the chaos that day, a heavenly demon was killed by the Yuan family's pure yang cultivator, Yuan Lingtian, and the Lingyun Valley's pure yang cultivator, Fu Lingzi, who had come to help. Of the four Asuras, one was killed by the combined forces of the Yuan family's cultivators. One was successfully killed by Yuan Feixiang with the help of the family's cultivators, and the last one was injured by Yuan Lingtian and Laozu. Together with another Asura, they led the remaining one-third of Mara's army and fled in defeat. The Yuan family had obtained a complete victory. The only thing that the Yuan family found strange was that the Mara army that had attacked the Yuan family had originally been led by 2 heavenly demons and 4 Azuras. However, on the day of the Yuan family's sneak attack, Mara's army had only been led by 1 heavenly demon and 3 Azuras. Originally, the Yuan family's sneak attack had only been to suppress the arrogance of Mara's army. Unexpectedly, there had been such a change in Mara's army. Hence, the 2 pure yang cultivators, Yuan Lingtian and Laozu, had made a prompt decision to turn the sneak attack into an all-out counterattack by the Yuan family. Even though the Yuan family had paid the price of 2 great cultivators and several Dharma adepts in this battle, compared to the results of the battle, it was glorious enough. Although there were many questions about the Yuan family's great victory this time, just half a day later, another piece of news that shook the entire world of cultivation came. At the same time, many of these questions had a clear answer. Just as the Yuan family had launched a sneak attack on Mara's army, another part of the Mara's army that had been attacking the Ziyang Palace's camp at the mountain pass had also split into 3 groups and attacked the Ziyang Palace's camp and 2 other camps. Just as the cultivators of the Ziyang Palace were doing their best to defend and both sides were locked in a fierce battle, a heavenly demon and an Azura suddenly appeared from the side of the Mara army that had been attacking the west camp. This additional heavenly demon and Azura caught the entire Ziyang Palace off guard. The 3 late Dharma adepts from the Ziyang Palace who had been guarding the west camp self-destructed and died one after another. However, the camp was still taken over by Mara's army. After that, Mara's army took advantage of the situation to launch a surprise attack. Although the remaining cultivators of the Ziyang Palace had successfully retreated back to the camp with the help of the reinforcements that had been sent from the camp at the mountain pass, the Ziyang Palace had suffered heavy losses in this battle. Not only had they lost 3 great cultivators, but 2 of the 3-generation mid-Dharma adepts had also died. As for the remaining early and mid-Dharma adepts, they had lost 7 to 8 people. Chapter 1305. If the great victory of the Yuan clan had shaken the entire world of practitioners, then the great defeat of the Ziyang Palace was like a bucket of cold water that completely doused the joy of the practitioners. The position of the Ziyang Palace in the central mainland's practitioners was many times higher than that of the Yuan clan. They were the number 1 holy land in the central mainland, the number 1 sword sect in the world, and the direct swordsmanship of Jiao Daoren. The Ziyang Palace had many halos of the human practitioners, but they had all been destroyed in this great defeat. Even the Ziyang Palace had been defeated. How could Mara's army fight against them? Even though the Ziyang Palace had managed to destroy 2 Azuras in this battle, they had lost 3 Grand Adepts and 10 early and mid-Dharma Adepts. In addition, they had also lost many severely injured Adepts. There was no doubt that the Ziyang Palace was at a disadvantage. Moreover, after the West Camp had fallen, the low-level core forging disciples had almost all been killed. And after Mara's army had taken over the camp on the west side of the mountain pass, the Ziyang Palace's camp and the other 2 camps had fallen apart. On the other hand, Mara's army had occupied the west side of the cliff overlooking the Ziyang Palace's camp, which put the Ziyang Palace in an unprecedented passive position. That day, when Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu had broken out of the encirclement of Mara's army, they had been chased by a few high-level Mara. When Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu had laid in ambush and suddenly killed a Jade Shura and a Blood Shura, Mara, who had been chasing them, had finally retreated. Looking at the entire camp that had been destroyed by Mara's army, they did not know how many of the Ziyang Palace's adepts had managed to escape. But now that Mara's army had heavenly demons and Azuras guarding it, the 2 of them naturally did not dare to hunt for battle merits and could only retreat to the Jinling camp. The first thing Lu Ping did upon returning to the base was to immediately head to the public square of the base to check on the battle achievement leaderboard for the mid-Dharma adepts. When he saw that Xie Tianyang and Su Jin's names were still on the leaderboard, Lu Ping heaved a sigh of relief. It was obvious that both of them had not perished after the fall of the base. However, Lu Ping immediately discovered that there had been an earth-shattering change on the battle merit leaderboard. After the battle at Purple Sun Palace's camp, although Lu Ping had to flee in a sorry state in the end, he had still killed many high-ranking Mara. He was still ranked first with 178 points. However, The second direct disciple of Purple Sun Palace, Fan Mingjie, who had always been ranked second behind Lu Ping, had been replaced by Yuan Feixiang, who had originally been ranked fourth. Now, Yuan Feixiang's battle achievement had reached 176 points. She was only one blood Azura away from Lu Ping's first place on the leaderboard. Although Lu Ping was shocked, he still looked down. Xie Tianyang had appeared in third place. His battle achievement had surpassed Fan Mingjie, who had originally been ranked second, by 3 points, reaching 151 points. However, the gap between him and the first two had indeed gradually widened. Fan Mingjie followed closely behind, ranked fourth with 148 points. Nangong Xiaojian from Skyward Pavilion had been pushed to fifth place, but he was only 5 points away from Fan Mingjie by one blood Azura. After them were Qin Wuliang from Crystal Palace and Chao Jianpain from Heavenly Arcana Sect. Behind these two was Yu Ziqing from Talisman Pavilion, who had appeared for the first time on the leaderboard and was ranked third. His battle achievement ranking had already fallen all the way to 8th place. The 9th rank was another fresh face who had made it into the top 10 for the first time. Moreover, it was obvious that he was a cultivator from the Yuan clan. Lu Ping frowned. He also knew this Yuan Ku and had met him before. Lu Ping continued to look down the leaderboard. Su Jin had already reached 10th place. At 17th place, he saw a disciple from the Yuan clan again. It was his old acquaintance, Yuan Jinglei. Lu Ping heaved a sigh of relief. This time, he was finally certain that something had happened on the battlefield between the Yuan clan and Mara's army. However, compared to Purple Sun Palace's failure, the Yuan clan had clearly obtained a victory. Very soon, news of the Yuan clan defeating Mara's army, Yuan Lingtian Laozu slaying a heavenly demon, and Yuan Soar slaying an Azura reached Jinling's encampment. Everyone in Jinling was talking about it. However, compared to the negative impact of Purple Sun Palace's defeat, the Jinling cultivators who were looking at the leaderboard all looked at Yuan Soar, who was only 2 points behind Lu Ping. They were obviously worried that Yuan Soar would surpass Lu Ping and snatch the throne of first place. Yin Tianchu was ranked 47th on the leaderboard with 79 points. He had killed a Blood Shura and a Jade Shura when he had helped Xie Tianyang and the others escape. After that, when the 4 of them had surrounded the Azura, he had killed a few Blood Shura and a Jade Shura, which had brought him 20 points. Then, while Lu Ping was attacking and breaking out of the encirclement, he had killed a few Blood Mara at the side. This had caused his battle points to skyrocket, and he had entered the leaderboard in one fell swoop. The appearance of another cultivator from their sect on the leaderboard of the mid-Dharma stage should have been a joyous event for the Jinling sect. However, because of the sudden rise of Yuan Soar on the leaderboard, the Jinling disciples were all worried about whether Lu Ping would be able to keep his position as a helper, and the attention they paid to Yin Tianchu had dropped significantly. In the meeting hall, Tianqing Laozu looked at Tianshan, Tianqin, and Xiang Lu Laozu. He said, "Shouldn't we give Lu Ping some support? He is the greatest hope for our sect in the future, but now we are focusing all our energy on fighting for the early Dharma stage on the leaderboard. This doesn't seem fair to him. Sister, aren't we going too far?" Tianshan Laozu looked hesitant as well. It was obvious that he had thought about this as well. Tianqin Laozu's face was cold as he said, "What are you worried about? Will Lu Ping complain to us because of this, or even vent his anger on the sect?" Looking at the expressions of Tianshan and Tianqing Laozu, it was obvious that Tianqin Laozu's words had hit the nail on the head. Tianqin Laozu snorted coldly and said, "It's true that Lu Ping is the hope of our sect, but because of this, while he is still fine, we are starting to worry about his gains and losses. We are afraid that he will vent his anger and complain if there is even the slightest bit of unhappiness. What are you afraid of? Afraid that he will hate the sect, or even afraid that he will break out of the sect?" Tianqin Laozu simply did not look at the two's expressions. He sighed and continued, "I know what you are thinking. It is not easy for such a good seedling to appear in our sect, and he has made so many contributions to the sect. Everyone wants to protect him and follow his lead. In your opinion, the sect should focus on him and provide him with all the conveniences for his growth. You should even put all your hopes on him. But in the end, you will destroy him and even the sect." Tianqin Laozu saw the puzzled and thoughtful expressions on the faces of Tianshan Laozu and Tianqing Laozu. He continued, "Do you know why Uncle Tianxiang and Humph Tianling always let this kid run around the world? Don't they know what this kid means to the sect? Don't they worry that something will happen to this kid? Don't they know that with this kid's aptitude and cultivation speed, if they keep him in the sect and gather all the resources of the sect to fully support his cultivation, he may have even greater achievements than he has now? Will it be safer and less worrisome than this?" In fact, countless sects in the cultivation world have used these methods to cultivate their own geniuses and hopes. In fact, many of these people have indeed successfully grown to a height that the entire sect is happy about. Later on, they have made a name for themselves in the cultivation world, and even led the sect to glory. But so what? After these geniuses become true spirits, they mysteriously disappear, or use up their lifespans, or simply die. After these geniuses become true spirits, how many of these sects have not declined along with the disappearance of these geniuses? In the end, this sect does not belong to one person. As for those genius cultivators who were personally nurtured by their sects, after they shined in the cultivation world, they did not bring anything to continue the legacy of their sections. In other words, the things they left for their sects were far from what the sects had paid for the rise of these geniuses. Therefore, these sects will never be able to achieve long-term glory. In the process of those geniuses' rise, they are fully cultivated by the sect, which in their eyes is a matter of course. But when they finally have the chance to shine, they only think about whether their cultivation can go further and whether they can pursue that illusory legendary realm. For their pursuit, they still ask for the full help of the whole sect, which in their eyes is also a matter of course. What's more, at this time, do you think there is anyone in the whole sect who dares to fight against those grown geniuses? Looking at Tianshan and Tiancheng, who had already understood something, Ancestor Lu Qin gave a mocking smile and said, "When a sect uses all its resources to cultivate a genius who originally wanted to revitalize the sect, but in the end, he becomes a person who asks for everything from the sect, the whole sect becomes a one-man sect. Is this considered getting caught in a trap of one's own making? Therefore, when this genius leaves this world, the sect that the genius belongs to has no choice but to decline. The cultivation world often laments the loss of a certain genius, so the sect has no choice but to decline. However, they never thought that it was precisely because of this genius that the sect's foundation was exhausted, so it had no choice but to decline. Wasn't it the same with Taishan Laozu? When Taishan Laozu was alive, our sect's prestige even made Fei Ling's sect retreat. But after Taishan Laozu disappeared, our sect almost couldn't even be a medium-sized sect and was almost suppressed by Fei Ling's sect and other sections. Was it because of the absence of Taishan Laozu? No. It's because Taishan Laozu almost exhausted the foundation that our sect had accumulated for thousands of years in order to advance to the pure yang stage and achieve the real spirit, so that Jinling almost lost the capital to continue the sect's inheritance. Taishan Laozu was Jinling at that time, and Jinling was Taishan Laozu at that time. Who in the whole sect dared to go against his will? Chapter 1306. Lyra Laozu's words had obviously impacted Tianshan and Tianqing Laozu quite a bit. Both of them were still frowning as they pondered over Lyra Laozu's words. Lyra Laozu was obviously under a lot of pressure because of his deliberate suppression of Lu Ping. Although no one questioned him, and even Lu Ping himself did not mind, Lu Ping's strength, prestige, and contribution had reached a very high level in Jinling. He enjoyed a very high reputation in Jinling, and this was enough to put a heavy psychological pressure on Lyra Laozu. Now that Lyra Laozu had said everything in one breath, he felt relaxed. Although Lyra Laozu believed that what he did was right, and that it was beneficial to the sect in the long run, and even to Lu Ping himself, the pressure of not being understood made Lyra Laozu feel that he would rather summon another lightning tribulation. Little Lu, we will naturally do our best to help, but we will definitely not help with everything we ask for. We will try our best to help the sect and the cultivator with all our strength. Also, the rise of a sect can never be because of one person, but because of a group of people. The rise of one person can only affect the sect for a short period of time, but the gradual and continuous rise of a group of people can ensure that the sect's legacy can last as long as possible. Tianshan Laozu let out a long sigh and said, "Then this time." Lyra Laozu finished his words and said, "This time, he already has Tianchu's help. With the two of them working together, even if little Lu can't take first place, he can at least stay on the list and get a place to enter the 7th Patriarch's Taoist altar. That is enough." At this point, Lyra Laozu's face had a touch of worry, and he said, "Little Lu is too conspicuous. Of course, this is a reflection of his own strength, but this is the Central Plains, the holy land of human cultivators. There are many sects and geniuses, and our sect is just an inconspicuous medium-sized sect from the barren North Sea." Tiancheng Laozu's eyes widened, and he said with a fierce face, "Someone wants to harm little Lu?" Lyra Laozu nodded and said, "Although we don't know about the various sects in the Central Plains, it goes without saying that the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. The sects from the North Sea have already arrived, and according to the news from the North Sea, Xianling sect, Songhai sect, and even a few other sects seem to be very afraid of little Lu. With little Lu's current strength, the sects from the North Sea are naturally not afraid of him, but they are afraid that they will collude with cultivators from the Central Plains or overseas sections. It is easy to dodge a spear in the open, but difficult to guard against an arrow in the dark. Staying in an inconspicuous position on the list of battle merits will make the cultivators from the various sects in the Central Plains think that little Lu is not a threat, and that is the most important thing. When Lu Ping walked into the meeting hall, he did not know that Lyra Laozu and the others had just had a heated discussion about him, but the atmosphere inside seemed to be a little strange. After meeting the three Laozu, Tanqing Laozu coughed and asked, "Little fellow, when will you be able to produce the Samling 5 Elements elixir that you mentioned to the old man previously?" "Yes, the old man can't wait any longer." Lu Ping looked at Tiancheng Laozu with a hint of surprise. He thought to himself that this Laozu had previously said that he was not in a hurry to recover from his internal injuries, and that he wanted to make the best use of his time to break through to the early Dharma stage. But now he was going back on his words. Could it be that he was thinking of breaking through to the mid-Dharma stage after advancing? But it was not so easy to break through to the mid-Dharma stage now. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Uncle, it's the Samling Fire Source Elixir." The Samling 5 Elements elixir is just a general name for this type of elixir. You specialize in fire-based techniques, and your source is naturally the essence of fire. Naturally, you have to use the Samling Fire Source Elixir. "Oh?" Tiancheng Laozu thought about it and said, "It's just that this elixir seems to be a little too extravagant. I heard that this elixir needs different stages of the 5 elements in order to be nurtured, and you were able to hasten its growth to 7 leaves in such a short period of time. I'm afraid that you must have used some kind of treasure that can shorten the growth of spirit herbs. Could it be that you're only able to refine one Samling Fire Source elixir?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "This rumor is wrong. I originally thought so, but after hasten the growth of the Samling 5 Elements leaf, I found that each leaf of the Samling 5 Elements leaf can actually be used to refine any kind of origin elixir of the 5 elements. Moreover, each leaf can be used as the main ingredient, and together with other precious spirit herbs, it can be used to refine 3 origin elixirs of the same attribute. In other words, the 7 leaves of the Samling 5 Elements leaf in my hands can be used to refine 3 Samling Fire Source elixirs, and the remaining 6 leaves can be used to refine a total of 18 origin elixirs of the 5 elements, depending on the situation in the future." Grand Ancestor Tiancheng's eyes lit up. It was important to repair the origin so that his cultivation could rise again, but if the price paid was too great, it would make Grand Ancestor Tiancheng feel uneasy. Thinking about the method of cultivating the Samling 5 Elements leaf, Lu Ping had to pay a total of 35 types of 5 elements spiritual objects of all levels, ranging from the lower grade of the mystic level to the lower grade of the heaven level. In addition, in order to hasten the growth, he also had to pay a priceless wood phoenix golden elixir and various other rare spirit liquids. In order to refine the elixir, he also needed a large number of rare spirit herbs. If the price paid was only to refine a single elixir that could heal an early Dharma adept's origin elixir, It was likely that not many people in the world of cultivation would go back and do so. It was just that the Samling Five Elements leaf had been a legend ever since the seventh patriarch opened the sky. After all, no one had actually seen this type of spirit herb. The few words that Taoist Gue had left behind were also vague and unclear. If Lu Ping had not successfully cultivated the Samling Five Elements leaf, how would he have known its true use? Tiancheng Laozu hesitated for a while, but finally sighed and said, "It's a pity. If it could be cultivated into an 8 or even a 9-leaf spirit herb, it would be a panacea that could even heal the injuries of a mid or late Dharma adept's origin elixir." Naturally, Lu Ping would not tell them that not only did he already have a complete 9-leaf Samling Five Elements leaf, he also had 2 seeds in his possession other than this 7-leaf spirit herb. He only smiled and said, "It's not that easy to injure a mid or late Dharma adept's origin elixir. Furthermore, there are many more early Dharma adepts than the first 2, so the chances of them getting injured are much higher as well. Therefore, when the 7 leaves of the Samling Five Elements leaf are cultivated, it would be more economical to use it to cultivate elixirs." Lu Ping paused for a moment before continuing, "What's more, if you want to cultivate the 8th and 9th leaf, you'll need mid-grade and high-grade heaven-rank spirit herbs. This is a problem that even the Holy Lands and sects would have a headache dealing with. Also, as the number of leaves increases, the number of spirit pellets that can be used to concoct will decrease. An 8-leaf spirit herb can only be used to concoct 2 spirit pellets, and a 9-leaf spirit herb can only be used to concoct 1 spirit pellet. Although the efficacy of the spirit pellets is several times better than the former, each spirit pellet can only be used to concoct 1 person." Tiancheng Laozu secretly exchanged glances with Tianqin and Tianshan Laozu and said, "Hearing you say this, the old man is even more impatient. Tomorrow, you can start cultivating the panacea for the old man. These days, the Mara battlefield at the 9 Mystical Tower will not be peaceful, so let's all take a break." From the beginning, Lu Ping had guessed that Tiancheng Laozu must have a deeper meaning for suddenly wanting him to cultivate the Samling Fire Source Elixir. At this time, the competition for the battle points rankings was at its most intense. The Yuan family and the Ziyang Palace had 1 victory and 1 defeat in the battle against the Mara army. This was the time when the heirs of the various sects were fighting for the battle points. Now that he was being sent to cultivate elixirs, it was obvious that he was giving up his position at the top of the rankings to someone else. Was this not the sect's method of suppressing him? However, Lu Ping also knew that this was actually a form of protection from the sect. Of course, even though Jinling had considered this for the sake of the entire sect, Lu Ping happened to have some other ideas in the past few days. In particular, the heavenly demon that besieged the Yuan family had suddenly appeared on the battlefield at the Ziyang Palace. Although it seemed like nothing on the surface, because of the reminder from the Longhuai ancestor, Lu Ping could not help but suspect the Yuan family. He could take this opportunity to rest for a while, and take a look at the current situation of the various sects on the battlefield at the 9 Mystical Tower. The Longhuai ancestor had only traveled in the Central Plains for a few years, and was able to discover the problem with the Yuan family. Although the Longhuai ancestor might know some secrets that had disappeared since the beginning of the world, if the Longhuai ancestor could know about them, then the 6 Holy Lands, such as the Ziyang Palace, which had a similarly long history, might also know about them. Thinking of this, Lu Ping smiled and said, "That's good. This is also the first time this disciple has refined the Yuan Fire Source pill. This disciple is very curious about this pill that has never appeared in the cultivation world. However, to refine the Samling Fire Source pill, in addition to a leaf of the Samling Five Elements leaf as the main ingredient, many other rare spiritual herbs are needed. I'm afraid it will take a while to collect them." Lao Tzu did not expect Lu Ping to agree to stay and refine the pill so easily. Although he was surprised, he immediately threw a storage bag over and said, "The spiritual herbs inside were collected by the old man over the years. Some were taken from the sect's treasury. According to your previous instructions, this should be enough." Lu Ping took the storage bag and scanned it with his divine sense. There were still a lot of spiritual herbs inside. Tiancheng Laozu really put in a lot of effort, so he smiled and said, "Martial uncle, don't worry. Originally, it would only take 2 or 3 days. However, This is the first time this disciple has refined this pill, so it will take at most 5 days. Tiancheng Laozu snorted coldly and said, "The old man has waited for decades. How long will it take?" Lu Ping chuckled and did not speak, but he could still see the eagerness in Tiancheng Laozu's eyes. Chapter 1307. Tiancheng and Laozu had not expected Lu Ping to agree so readily to make elixirs when the battle for the mid-Dharma stage battle credits was at its most intense. Only Laozu had her head lowered as she sipped on a cup of steaming spirit tea. The rising mist made it difficult for others to see the expression on her face. Tiancheng Laozu laughed dryly and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you, martial nephew." The battlefield with the 9 mystical tower as the center could be roughly divided into 3 regions. The central region was where the 9 mystical tower was located, as well as the thousands of Marish troops that were currently surrounding the 9 mystical tower. The outermost region was the encirclement formed by the major sects of the human race, with the 9 mystical tower and Mara's army at the center. And in the middle of these 2 regions, there was a ring that was thousands of miles in depth. This was the buffer zone between the human race cultivators and Mara's army. At the same time, it was also the battlefield where the human race cultivators and Mara's army hunted and killed each other. At this time, other than the 9 mystical tower, the Purple Sun Palace, the Tianxian sect, and the Skyward Pavilion, which were still being attacked by Mara's army, the other sects had basically formed a balance with the Mara's army. Both sides were facing off and killing each other in the buffer zone that was thousands of miles in radius. And this circular buffer zone had also become the main source for the cultivators of the various sects to hunt down Mara and snatch battle credits. At this moment, in a place several tens of kilometers away from a hill, Ji Tianxian was cursing loudly as he hurriedly applied various puppet secret techniques to the puppet he was standing on. "After this time, I'm not going to do this mission anymore. I'm going to find all the best spiritual materials and make a top-notch life puppet. It's over, it's over, it's all over." Ji Tianxian threw 3 black wooden blocks behind him, each about a foot long. Then he took out a talisman and slapped it on the puppet skylark beneath him. A series of cracking sounds came from the puppet skylark's body, and Ji Tianxian could not help but twitch his mouth in pain. A few hundred feet behind Ji Tianxian, a Jade Shura was chasing him. Behind the Jade Shura were 5 or 6 blood Mara, and behind these high-level Mara, there were nearly 100 large and small Mara following him in a mess. The 3 black wooden blocks that Ji Tianxian tossed out shocked the Jade Shura, who was chasing after him. She couldn't help but slow down. The human cultivator in front of her had used some strange items to give them some trouble, so she had to be careful. The Jade Shura slashed forward with one hand, and Ji Tianxian did not even see the Jade Shura use her companion spirit treasure before one of the 3 wooden blocks was split in half. But Ji Tianxian was sure that the Jade Shura had used her companion spirit treasure before. Fortunately, he finally had a chance to catch his breath. Ji Tianxian took the opportunity to widen the distance between him and the Jade Shura to 1,000 feet, and the other 2 wooden blocks suddenly wriggled and changed. 2 wooden puppets suddenly formed, and they pounced toward the blood Mara behind the Jade Shura. Although they were quickly destroyed by the blood Mara, they still caused some confusion. Seeing that the Jade Shura was about to catch up to Ji Tianxian actually breathed a sigh of relief, because the hill he had planned on was now right in front of him. This is the last chance to lure the enemy. Ji Tianxian secretly made up his mind. The puppet skylark under his feet suddenly made a big turn in the air, and from its previous pathetic escape, it turned into a direct confrontation with the Jade Shura. But at this time, the puppet skylark under his feet had been activated by his puppet's secret skills, and it had completely fallen apart just as it completed its turn. Ji Tianxian himself almost fell to his death from the air. At this time, the Jade Shura instinctively discovered the potential threat, and at this time, the army of nearly 100 Mara finally caught up. Seeing that Ji Tianxian was no longer running, they all rushed toward Ji Tianxian without the Jade Shura's command. Ji Tianxian chuckled. At this time, the Jade Shura finally realized the reason why it felt threatened, and suddenly let out a howl. Nearly 100 Mara suddenly received the opposite order when they were rushing in the air, causing them to inevitably become chaotic in the air. At this time, more than 10 streaks of light of different colors suddenly rose from behind the hill, forming a loose encirclement that actually surrounded the nearly 100 Mara troops. Hee, I actually attracted a Jade Shura. It belongs to me now. Before Green Fox's voice had even faded, the dozen or so giant fireballs at Tianqing Laozu's side had already responded. More than 10 fireballs of different colors rushed toward the Jade Shura from all directions, sealing off all possible escape routes for the Jade Shura. He was just an early Dharma stage human practitioner. A look of disdain flashed across the Jade Shura's face. She decided to first kill this ungrateful human practitioner and devour the source. But the fire element source did not seem to be very compatible with her. But so what? The Jade Shura howled, and the companion spirit treasure in her hand finally lit up. It was a golden spirit treasure that looked like a crab's pincers. She first went to pinch the burning flame on Tianqing Laozu's chest. She could instinctively sense that the flame Tianqing Laozu was holding on his chest was the core of the dozen or so flames around him, and it was also the most threatening one. But before the Jade Shura's companion spirit treasure could get its hands on it, the dozen or so flames surrounding it, as well as the one on Tianqing Laozu's chest, collapsed like waves of fire. They quickly merged together and formed a sea of fire. Tianqing Laozu hid in the sea of fire as soon as it formed. Outside the sea of flames, Qinghu watched as the celestial zither ancestor dove into the sea of flames. She sighed heavily and said, "This move again." Green Wolf followed behind Green Fox and smiled. "Big sister, you don't really want to steal Tianqing Laozu's credit. Why do you have to do this?" Green Fox hummed and said, "So what if I do want to steal it? We are serving Lu Tianping, not Zhenling." Green Tiger laughed coldly behind her. "Then let's show Lu Tianping some respect. Even if we don't steal his elder's credit, there's nothing to say if we steal someone else's." Green Fox laughed evilly and said, "That's exactly what I was thinking." Green Wolf looked at the sea of fire in midair and said thoughtfully, "However, this sea of fire from Elder Tianqing is really not to be underestimated. He has been accumulating battle credits very quickly, and now he has already secured a spot on the early Dharma stage leaderboard. He should be catching up to Lu Tianyuan soon, right?" Green Tiger said disdainfully, "He has a mid-Dharma adept helping him. How could his credit not go up?" Green Wolf laughed coldly. "Nowadays, it's not uncommon for high-level adepts to help low-level adepts earn credit." Green Fox interrupted their argument and said, "Stop talking nonsense. If we don't make a move now, we'll have to kill Little and Little Mara." The three of them knew very well that it would not be easy to steal credit from Tianqing Laozu. Even though Tianqing Laozu was only an early Dharma adept, the power of his fire spell was not to be underestimated. Even with the help of the two mid-Dharma adepts, Tianqing and Laozu, it was not the first time that Tianqing Laozu had killed a Jade Shura. Green Fox thought that the two adepts of the same level, Tianqing or Tianshan, were only slightly more experienced than her, but the three of them rarely dared to kill a Jade Shura alone. It was clear that when Tianqing Laozu used this fire spell, Green Wolf and Green Tiger would not be able to defeat him even if they worked together. The three of them rushed into the midst of the demonic Shura horde, and immediately snatched a blood Shura amidst Ji Tianchuan's curses. With the three of them working together, and Qinghu being an authentic mid-Dharma adept, Qinghu killed the blood Shura very smoothly and successfully snatched the 3 points. It was just that Ji Tianxian was so anxious that he kept cursing and swearing behind the three of them. He swore that he would never do this mission of luring the enemy ever again. Every time he risked his life to lure Mara's team, he would end up with nothing to show for it. Among the few early Dharma adepts of Zhenling's sect who were currently fighting for battle credits, his battle credits were the worst. Amidst a series of thunderous explosions, a blood devil lured by Qin Yu and Qin Gang was executing its soul-devouring ability when Lei Laolu, who was hiding behind them, suddenly launched a sneak attack. A series of thunderous divine abilities blasted the blood devil into a daze. Before the blood devil could react, Lei Laolu had already attacked again. With the cooperation of the Qin brothers, he killed the blood devil. As the blood demon's body disintegrated, a soul-devouring crystal was left behind, which Qin Yu hurriedly kept. With this soul-devouring crystal, he could exchange it with Zhenling for a portion of the soul-returning elixir or soul-nourishing elixir, as well as a considerable amount of training resources from the temporary marketplace. As the battle with Mara became more intense, the casualties among the human practitioners increased. Many practitioners who had been injured by the soul-devouring power of the blood demon were unable to recover from their injuries due to the lack of soul-devouring crystals. This caused the value of the soul-devouring crystal to rise steadily. Qin Gang's face was a little pale. It was obvious that the battle with the blood demon had consumed a lot of his energy, but he still looked excited as he said to sixth brother Lei, "Brother, it's another 15 points. We're almost on the list, aren't we?" Sixth brother Lei took out the imaging stone and looked at it, then smiled at Qin Gang and said, "It should be. But the early Dharma stage battle rankings changed too quickly, so it's hard to say. After all, it's rare to see such a well-timed ambush." Among Lu Tianyuan, Li Tianru, and Ji Tianxian, only Ji Tianxian remained indignant, while Li Tianru and Lu Tianyuan merely smiled and turned to deal with another blood demon. By now, Lu Tianyuan's position on the battle rankings was becoming more and more stable, so he did not mind giving up a blood demon to Qing Hu and the others. Moreover, Qing Hu and the other two had special statuses. Lu Tianyuan and Li Tianru were mature enough to not want their sect to lose such a powerful ally. Chapter 1308. The remaining 6 blood Mara were quickly surrounded and killed by the Jinling adepts. Among them, Qing Hu and the other two killed a blood Shura and a blood demon, while Lu Tianyuan and Tian Feng's 3-man team each killed a blood Shura. Lei Laolu used his strange speed and thunder magic to deal heavy damage to the blood Mara, and quickly got his hands on the second blood Shura. The death of 6 blood Mara caused the remaining hundreds of blood Mara of different sizes to quickly collapse. The Dharma adepts of Zhenling took the opportunity to kill more than half of the Mara team. At this moment, a loud noise came from the top of the hill, and Tianqin Laozu walked out of the sea of fire. Her face was pale, obviously because she had used up a lot of her inner yuan. However, she looked around and frowned. She said something to the Jinling adepts who were chasing Mara's team in the distance, and everyone gave up on chasing Mara and rushed back. At the same time, the sea of fire that covered the sky suddenly shrank, and a scream came from the sea of fire. Tianqin Laozu staggered out of it, but Tianqin Laozu's expression suddenly changed, and a colorful flame shot out from her sleeve towards Tianqin Laozu's back. She shouted, "You scoundrel, how dare you!" A green filament flickered in the air, swimming towards Tianqin Laozu's back. Suddenly, Tianqin Laozu roared, and Tianqin Laozu sensed that something was wrong behind him, but it was too late to dodge. He saw a colorful flame shoot behind him, and a series of sounds like water drops splashing into a pot of boiling oil. The green filament was burned to nothing by the colorful flame. Tianqin Laozu swayed, and there was a muffled sound in the distance, and then a dim light appeared 100 feet away and fled into the sky. Tianqin Laozu shouted at the Jinling warriors to stop chasing, and he told everyone to be on guard. There was an explosion, and the sea of fire had disappeared. What was left was the Jade Shura, who was burning in flames, screaming and flying back and forth in the air. Eventually, she turned into ashes. After the Jade Shura died, the fire became a red flame, and Tianqin Laozu took it in his hand. Tianqin Laozu, who had looked tired because of the consumption of his qi, was shocked. Staring at the spiritual fire in Ancestor Tianqing's palm, Qing Hu gasped and said, "Mother and child core fire. It turns out to be such a rare spiritual fire of heaven and earth. No wonder." Green Tiger and Green Wolf had never seen a spirit fire like this before, but Green Tiger was more straightforward. He asked, "What kind of spirit fire is the mother and child core fire? It is so powerful." Green Fox said, "The mother and child core fire is only a mid-tier heaven-class spirit fire, but it can be divided into 1 low-tier heaven-class spirit fire, 3 mid-tier earth-class spirit fires, and 9 high-tier mystic-class spirit fires. These 13 spirit fires are centered around a low-tier heaven-class spirit fire, and can be used to practice a powerful secret skill called Burning Sky Hell. It seems that Tiancheng Laozu has successfully practiced this secret skill. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill 2 Jade Shura and get on the War Glory leaderboard. Supreme Divine Secret Skill? Green Tiger smacked his lips, his eyes full of envy. Even Green Fox, who was at the mid-Dharma stage, had only managed to practice 2 or 3 special skills, let alone Tiancheng and Green Wolf. Tiancheng Laozu was only at the early Dharma stage, and yet he was able to practice such a powerful skill, although most of it was because of the mother and child core fire. With this powerful skill, Tiancheng Laozu had the right to challenge those of a higher level. Jinling had set up an ambush and killed a Jade Shura and 6 Blood Mara in one fell swoop. In the buffer zone, such a feat could be considered to be extremely lucky and powerful. But the commotion caused by the battle still attracted the attention of others. In the buffer zone, one could not and did not dare to go all out in any battle with the Devil Luo army, because they did not know when the Devil Luo or other cultivators would be attracted by the battle, waiting for both sides to suffer heavy losses before they could reap the benefits. Therefore, the human cultivators who hunted and killed the Devil Luo army had to leave enough backups to imitate the occurrence of accidents. But this time, the attack on Tiancheng Laozu was not an attempt to steal the War Glory leaderboard. It was a complete assassination, and the target was only Tiancheng Laozu. Who was the assassin? Tianqin Laozu and the others had gained a lot from the battle, but after what had happened, they didn't dare stay any longer. They hurried back to Jinling's base. In Jinling's sect's encampment, Yin Tianchu was dressed in black. His face seemed to always be shrouded in a layer of mist, making it difficult for the cultivators who had seen his face to remember his appearance. At this moment, he was standing in front of the psychic jade stele in the square. The cold and murderous aura around him caused the Zhanling sect cultivators to subconsciously keep their distance from him. More than 10 rays of light descended from the sky. They were Tianqin, Tiancheng Laozu, and the others who had returned from the buffer zone. The practitioners of Jinling, who had already noticed that Lu Tianyuan and Tiancheng's points had risen again from the War Glory leaderboard, cheered and greeted them. Tianshan Laozu and Xiang Lu Laozu, who were stationed at the base, also came out of the cultivation room to greet them, but they soon found Yin Tianchu standing in front of the psychic jade stele. Nephew Yin, I haven't seen you for a few days, and you've gained a lot. After Tianqin Laozu and Tianshan Laozu briefly talked about the encounter in the buffer zone, they saw Yin Tianchu walking towards them, so Tianshan Laozu took the initiative to greet them. For the past 10 days, Lu Ping had been in seclusion in the base to refine pills. Yin Tianchu didn't go out to kill Mara with the others, but disappeared alone for a few days. Today was the first time he returned. However, Tianshan Laozu knew that Yin Tianchu had also gained a lot in the past few days through the changes in the War Glory leaderboard. Not only did his ranking not fall, but it had risen by 1 place. Although the momentum of the increase in points was not as fast as when he joined forces with Lu Ping, it was enough to prove that although Yin Tianchu's strength was not as good as Lu Ping's, it was enough to compare with the direct descendants of the major sections. For a medium-sized sect from the North Sea to have 2 such outstanding third-generation disciples was enough to make Jinling proud. Yin Tianchu silently bowed to Tianqin, Tianshan, and Tianshan Laozu, then said, "The people from Azure Sea Sect and Xianling Sect have also arrived. Azure Sea Sect and Supreme Xian Sect are together, while Xianling Sect has consolidated a small base near the Crystal Palace. Ocean Flame Sect and Shui Yin Pavilion are also here, but the 2 sects have chosen to base themselves in the periphery." Tianqin Laozu and the other 2 nodded silently, thinking of the cultivator who had almost assassinated Tiancheng Laozu during this hunt. Chapter 1309. Just after the various sects of the North Sea had appeared on the battlefield of the 9 Xinlu Tower, Tiancheng Laozu had been attacked. No matter what, this was not enough to make the 3 second-generation Jinling adepts suspect anything. Moreover, the assailant had accused Tiancheng Laozu of being the assailant for no reason. No matter how they looked at it, it seemed a little strange. Tianqin Laozu turned to Tianshan Laozu and asked, "Does the sect have any information on how Wang Xinqing advanced to the late Dharma stage?" Tianshan Laozu shook his head and said, "This matter is indeed a little strange. It seems that the disciples of the Blue Sea sect do not know that they have a great adept of the late Dharma stage. However, Wang Xuanqing's core was severely damaged by disciple nephew Lu. Even if he had the Samling 5 Elements elixir to recover his core, it would still be impossible for him to advance to such a high level in one go. This time, it must have something to do with the Taishian sect. It's just that ever since the battle in the station, Wang Xianqing has not appeared again. It seems that the Taishian sect is also somewhat secretive about Wang Xuanqing's existence. The three Laozu could not figure out the reason behind this, so they simply changed the topic. Tianqin Laozu looked towards a training room deep in the station. There was a hot ball of fire hovering in the air, and for the past 10 days, there had been various kinds of elixir fragrances wafting in the training room. Tianqin Laozu was also a master alchemist, but because this Samling fire source elixir was almost the first time in the world of alchemy, even she could not guess what Lu Ping had been doing in the world of alchemy these days. This rascal vowed that the Samling fire source elixir would only take 3 to 5 days. Now that 10 days have passed, why is there still no news? Could it be that he is hiding in there to refine other elixirs? Compared to Tianqin Laozu, Tiancheng Laozu was a little more nervous. He said, "Could it be that this Samling fire source pill is more difficult to refine? After all, no one in the cultivation world has ever refined this kind of pill." Tianqing Laozu, however, asked curiously, "But it's been a full 10 days. I thought that disciple nephew Lu's ranking in the mid-Dharma stage would have dropped a lot, but now he's still in the top 5. What? This time, it was the turn of Tianqin Laozu and Tianqing Laozu, who had been out hunting Mara for the past few days, to be surprised. The two of them came to the Psychic Jade Tablet to look at the mid-Dharma stage battle score list. They saw that after a full 10 days, Lu Ping's battle score was still at 178 points. However, his position at the top had naturally been surpassed by someone, and he was still in 4th place. But what was strange was that the 5 people who had surpassed Lu Ping were not the few cultivators who had been following closely behind Lu Ping as everyone had imagined. For example, Yuan Feixiang, who had only been 2 points away from surpassing Lu Ping, now had 176 points, but his ranking had dropped to 5th place. As for Xie Tianyang, who had been in 3rd place, his battle score remained the same. However, with 151 points, he was now only in 13th place, falling even further. As for Fan Mingjie, who had been in 4th place, he had returned to 2nd place. His battle score had reached 187 points. Clearly, Fan Mingjie's battle score had increased greatly during this period of time when Ziyang Palace had focused all their efforts on defending the Mountain Pass encampment and resisting the attack of Mara's army led by the 3 Sky Fiends. As for Nangong Xiaojin, the Southern Pavilion Master of Skyward Pavilion, he was right behind him with 183 points. His ranking had risen from 5th place to 3rd place. Qin Shijun, who had been in 6th place, was said to have killed an Azura with the help of the Crystal Palace cultivators. After that, he had surrounded and killed Mara's team several times in the buffer zone. His points kept rising, surpassing everyone else in one fell swoop. With 195 points, he took 1st place. Tianxian sect's Chao Jianpain had risen to 6th place. She was only 1 blood Azura away from Yuan Feixiang. After Chao Jianpain, Yuan Kua was in 7th place. Wuxing School's Hu Wuliang was in 8th place. Lingyuan Valley's Qingguangzhang Zhifei was in 9th place. And Jiushuan Tower's Wei Zhan had finally made it into the top 10 on his own. Currently, among the top 10 ranks of the mid-Dharma stage battle score list, the 6 Holy Lands each occupied 1 place. However, the number 1 family in the world, the Yuan clan, had 2 people on the list in one fell swoop. One was the chief heir of the long-established Tianxian sect, while the other was a demon from the North Sea. Yin Tianchu deliberately looked at Ziyang Palace's Xie Tianyang and Su Jin. He knew both of them and had previously taken note of their battle score rankings. However, their battle score had not increased in the past 10 days. Other than Xie Tianyang, who had slipped to 13th place, Su Jin had slipped to below 20th place. However, compared to Su Jin, Yin Tianchu once again noticed the name of a cultivator from the Yuan clan. This person was called Yuan Jinglei. He had previously been in the 18th place, but now he had risen to the 14th place. It was said that the Yuan clan's thunder magic was incomparable to Mara's. It seemed that the rumors were true. Just by looking at the top 10 of the battle score list, they occupied 2 places, and the top 15 occupied 3 places. It was clear that the Yuan clan had played a huge role in Mara's crisis. Tianchu looked down again. He was ranked 46th on the battle score list. He had advanced by 1 place with 101 points, but the difference between him and those at the top of the list had actually widened. Not only Tianchu, but Tianqing, Lao Zhu, and the others had also noticed the problem with this ranking list. That's not right. Other than disciple Lu, who is cultivating in seclusion, why has Xie Tianyang, Yuan Feixiang, Su Jin, and the others' battle score not increased at all? Most of the people on the mid-Dharma ranking list were the elites of the 3rd generation of cultivators from various sections. These people were all people that the various sects paid attention to. Even Tianqing, Lao Zhu, and the others had long heard of these people's names. Tianqing Lao Zhu said, other than disciple Lu, Xie Tianyang, Yuan Feixiang, and Su Jin only stopped increasing their battle scores after the battle between the Yuan clan and the Ziyang Palace and Mara's army. This means that these 3 people either left their respective bases after that, or they suffered varying degrees of injuries during the battle and are now recuperating in their bases, so they are unable to participate in the battle. The Samling Fire Source Elixir was, after all, a legendary elixir. Although Lu Ping still had 6 leaves that had been hastened to the heaven-level lower grade as a backup, Lu Ping still did not dare to be careless. He put all his effort into cultivating the Samling Fire Source Elixir. The Na Chuan Cauldron, the Silver Spirit Flame, the Purple Crystal Royal Jelly, the Spirit Fire Smelting Purification Technique, the Spirit Explosion Technique that used top-grade spirit stones as a medium, and his powerful divine will. All of these were put together by Lu Ping. In just 3 days, Lu Ping had already successfully opened the alchemy furnace, and the 3 Samling Fire Source Elixirs were perfect. However, Lu Ping had to pay a hefty price for these 3 spirit pellets. Just during the core formation stage, Lu Ping had to detonate nearly 20 top-grade spirit stones in order to prevent the formation of defective spirit pellets. Although 20 top-grade spirit stones were only a drop in the bucket for Lu Ping, for a Zhenling mid-Dharma realm cultivator, 20 top-grade spirit stones were almost equivalent to the sect's cultivation allowance for 2 years. Although 20 top-grade spirit stones were only a drop in the bucket for Lu Ping, for a Zhenling mid-Dharma realm cultivator, 20 top-grade spirit stones were equivalent to the sect's cultivation allowance for 2 years. In addition, there was also half a bottle of Purple Crystal Royal Jelly. As the Purple Crystal Queen Bee's cultivation advanced to the mid-core forging stage, the quality of the royal jelly it brewed had improved again, but the output was getting lower and lower. This also made the Purple Crystal Royal Jelly in Lu Ping's hands more precious. With the improvement of Lu Ping's alchemy skills, unless it was necessary, he rarely used Purple Crystal Royal Jelly in the process of alchemy. However, in order to successfully refine the Samling Fire Source Elixir this time, Lu Ping directly poured half a bottle of royal jelly into the alchemy furnace. However, after Lu Ping successfully refined these 3 fire source elixirs, if Lu Ping opened the furnace again to refine again, even if it was to refine the water source elixir or wood source elixir of other attributes, he was confident that he could reduce the consumption to a minimum. However, this time, he used the rare spirit grass in the world to refine a legendary elixir. This also allowed Lu Ping's alchemy skills to achieve a comprehensive sublimation. This kind of enlightenment was similar to the epiphany during cultivation, so Lu Ping urgently needed to thoroughly stabilize it. Therefore, Lu Ping urgently needed to open the furnace again to refine elixirs. Moreover, he wanted to refine rare elixirs that were unique in the cultivation world. Lu Ping only used 1 day to restore his Zhen Yuan and prepare new alchemy materials. This time, he wanted to refine the White Lotus Body Shelter elixir. The main ingredient he wanted to use was the 9,000-year-old white jade lotus root that Lu Ping had kept in his collection until now. After several considerations, Lu Ping finally decided to refine this 9,000-year-old white jade lotus root into an elixir that could strengthen the body. Although this white jade lotus root was also a top-notch spiritual material for refining an avatar, If it could really become an avatar, its power would be much stronger than that of Lu Xiaoping, who had been refined from the 8,000-year-old gray willow tree. However, in Lu Ping's opinion, although an avatar was strong, it was ultimately an external object. If he refined the White Lotus Body Shelter Elixir and used it to strengthen the body, it might not be as fast as an avatar in the short term, but in the long run, it would be very beneficial to Lu Ping. The White Lotus Body Shelter Elixir was actually a type of elixir that was specially used to refine lotus roots to strengthen the body. The quality of this elixir was completely dependent on the grade of the white lotus root that was used as the main ingredient. A White Lotus Body Shelter Elixir that was refined from a 300-year-old white lotus root would have almost no effect on strengthening the body of a cultivator. However, if it was a 3,000-year-old white lotus root, then the White Lotus Body Shelter Elixir that was refined would be enough for a late Dharma adept to start a sect extermination war. If it was the 9,000-year-old white jade lotus root in Lu Ping's hands, even he himself did not know what kind of people he would provoke if news of it leaked out. At the very least, pure young adepts would probably fight it out with each other. Lu Ping's heart thumped violently. This was a treasure that he had obtained when Lu Ping was still in the blood condensation stage. As Lu Ping's level of cultivation and experience increased, Lu Ping became more aware of its value. This also made Lu Ping even more careful to conceal its existence. Chapter 13:10. The refining process of the White Lotus Body Storage Pill was even more complicated than the Samling Fire Source Pill. Naturally, it was more difficult to refine. What's more, unlike the Samling 5 Elements leaf in Lu Ping's possession, Lu Ping only had one 9,000-years-old white jade lotus root. If there was an accident, Lu Ping was not confident that he could find another similar white jade lotus root. Lu Ping would rather lengthen the time required to concoct the White Lotus Body Shelter pellet. Even so, the consumption of his true essence, divine sense, and spirit herbs would be greatly increased. But this way, Lu Ping would be able to grasp every detail of the process more precisely. He would strive to perfect every step of the process, also that he could successfully concoct the White Lotus Body Shelter pellet in one go. In fact, Lu Ping could have used a more conservative method. The previous section of the lotus root was divided into several sections and then refined separately. This way, the difficulty of refining would be reduced, and even if there was an accident, the entire lotus root would not be destroyed. However, this way, during the process of alchemy, the medicinal properties of the white jade lotus root would inevitably be lost. Even if every furnace was successful, the overall medicinal properties of the refined pills would not be able to catch up with the White Lotus Body Storage Pill that was refined in a single furnace. After a full 5 days, the Na Chuan cauldron finally opened. A small white lotus figure appeared on each of the 3 White Lotus Body Storage Pills. The moment the cauldron opened, they rushed out of the cauldron. Lu Ping was shocked at first, then he was overjoyed. There was even a hint of disbelief in his eyes. It was not unusual for a pill to have spirituality after it was refined, but for the spirituality of the pill to be so dense that there was a pill spirit similar to a tool spirit, this was really not simple. Although the pill spirits condensed on these 3 White Lotus Body Storage Pills were only embryonic and did not have their own consciousness, and they could only barely take shape with the help of the huge amount of spiritual energy gathered when the cauldron was opened. As time passed, the spiritual phantoms on these pills would collapse, but this was enough for Lu Ping's alchemy to stand at the peak of the cultivation world. According to legend, when Taoist Gui demonstrated alchemy to the audience, when the cauldron was opened, what flew out of it was not a round pill, but a variety of spirits. Then, a lightning tribulation would descend. The spirits that could safely survive the lightning tribulation would completely become existences like the tool spirits of spiritual treasures, while the pill spirits that could not survive the lightning tribulation would be destroyed along with the pill. Although the pills Lu Ping refined would not attract a lightning tribulation, the fact that they could condense a pill spirit the moment they came out of the cauldron was enough to be treasured by pure young cultivators. Each of the 3 White Lotus Body Storage Pills was the size of an egg. Not only were they condensed from the essence of a whole 9,000-year-old white jade lotus root, but they also contained a considerable amount of rare spiritual herbs that Lu Ping had accumulated over the years. This could be said to be the proudest work of Lu Ping's alchemy career. Out of the 3 spirit pellets, Lu Ping carefully collected 2 of them with the purple jade marrow mystic crystal bottles and placed them into the bottles. Each bottle contained only 1 spirit pellet, and Lu Ping sealed them with layers of spirit sealing art. The last pill was swallowed by Lu Ping without hesitation. This pill had a spirit. The moment Lu Ping threw it into his mouth, it even rolled on its own, trying to jump out of Lu Ping's mouth. After he swallowed it, it continued to jump, trying to escape the fate of being devoured and refined. Lu Ping had to silently circulate his zhenqi to suppress the resistance of the pill with the spirituality of his zhenqi. At the same time, he refined this white lotus body storage pill. After an entire day, Lu Ping had only absorbed all the essence of this pill into his bloodline. However, it would take a very long time for the essence of this pill to completely integrate into his body. The white feather body storage pill refined from the 9,000-year-old white jade lotus root was not an ordinary pill. If Lu Ping wanted to completely integrate it into his body, it would take a very long time. Not to mention, Lu Ping still had 2 other pills on him. If he wanted to completely refine them, it would take even longer. Legend has it that someone once used a 3,000-year-old white jade lotus root to refine this white lotus body storage pill. After successfully refining it, the pill could not only nourish the body, but it could also implant a divine ability similar to a substitution talisman. It could save the life of a cultivator in a moment of life and death. Although this effect could only be used once, it would undoubtedly give a cultivator an extra life. The white lotus body storage pill that Lu Ping refined was a 9,000-year-old white jade lotus root. Its effect was countless times stronger than the 3,000-year-old white lotus body storage pill. The substitution talisman must have the same effect as the 3,000-year-old white lotus body storage pill. In fact, it might even have more effects than the 3,000-year-old white lotus body storage pill. One had to know that the substitution talisman was one of the most profound achievements in the field of talismans. Its status in the field of talismans was similar to that of the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman. To make a substitution talisman, not only did it require top-notch talisman crafting skills, but it also required countless rare and precious spiritual materials in the process of making it. The cost of making a substitution talisman was no less than that of refining a white lotus body storage pill. The South Sea Talisman Pavilion was a sect that was proficient in making substitution talismans. Basically, every Dharma adept in the Talisman Pavilion had a substitution talisman as a life talisman. This gave the Talisman Pavilion cultivators a great advantage in battles. This was also the reason why the Talisman Pavilion had obtained the highest number of battle credits during the Siege of Mara among the large sections. For the time being, Lu Ping did not have the time to refine a second white lotus body storage pill. Although he could feel that the bones and muscles in his body were absorbing the essence of the elixir in his veins, Lu Ping did not have to deliberately stay in a state of isolation. Although he could not refine all 3 white lotus body storage pills in a short period of time to strengthen his physical body, Lu Ping could still roughly estimate that these 3 white lotus body storage pills would at least be able to push his physical body to the level of a spirit-nurturing treasure. With Lu Ping's physical body at that time, summoning a second thunder calamity to advance to the late Dharma stage would be no problem at all. Even if he were to face a third pure young thunder calamity, after Lu Ping had observed the thunder calamity of the numinous treasure being split in half, he believed that he might be able to resist it. However, at this time, Lu Ping's level of practice, strength, and foundation had still been improved, so naturally, Lu Ping would not casually summon the thunder calamity to advance to the late Dharma stage. In the meeting hall, when Tianqing Laozu received a samling fire source elixir from Lu Ping's hands, his hands were even trembling. Like Tianqing Laozu, who had sustained injuries to his foundation, he had usually given up any hope of improving his level of practice. Although Lu Ping had told him about the Samling 5 Elements leaf, Tianqing Laozu had only treated it as a form of hope. After all, ever since the legend of the Samling 5 Elements leaf had been passed down by Taoist Gue, no one in the world of practice had actually seen such a treasure. However, when this hope became a reality, even someone like Tianqing Laozu could not suppress the excitement in his heart. However, when Lu Ping casually asked, "Uncle Master, are you going to shut yourself off to refine the elixir now or after a period of time?" Tianqing Laozu's expression froze for a moment, but he immediately recovered and smiled. "There's no rush. Even if I recover from my original injuries, the old man will not immediately summon the thunder calamity. I've already waited for a few decades, so waiting for this battle to end won't make much of a difference. No matter what, the old man still has to fight for the early Dharma stage battle achievements list. If he advances to the mid-Dharma stage at this time, the old man has no confidence that he will be able to win against you. Chapter 1311. After hearing the news from the 9 Profound Towers battlefield in the past 10 days, Lu Ping was slightly surprised by the changes in the battle achievements list. Although Lu Ping had long since given up hope that he would be able to maintain first place on the leaderboard, he did not expect that he would still be ranked 4th. In the face of Lu Ping's surprise, Ji Tianxian could only express his grief. Is the buffer zone's Mara that easy to kill? While the human cultivators are hunting the moral cultivators, isn't the moral cultivators also hunting the human cultivators? Lu Ping grunted and said, "So, human cultivators do not have the advantage in the buffer zone?" Ji Tianxian nodded and said, "If they have the advantage, why would they need the buffer zone? At best, they are evenly matched. Besides, the current Mara is very cunning. When human cultivators set up traps to kill Mara, these Mara would often beat them at their own game. Moreover, the originally brainless Mara has also begun to gain intelligence, making it easier for others to fall for it." Quite a number of sects had suffered greatly in the hands of the Demon Luo army. Thus, the cultivators from the various sects are now being very cautious when entering the buffer zone. Additionally, they are all forming alliances. They would rather get less battle merits from hunting down the Demon Luo army than to be too arrogant and attract the attention of the Demon Luo army. Under such circumstances, how many people can obtain a harvest every day? Not only that, after entering the buffer zone, the cultivators not only face the increasingly cunning Mara's army, but also the cultivators of various sects with ulterior motives. In order to snatch battle achievements, they have killed and robbed people more than once or twice. Because of this, there have been many sects that have fallen out with each other. If not for the 13 pure young cultivators above them, I'm afraid that the encirclement of Mara this time would have become a motley crew being chased and beaten by Mara's army. In just 10 days, Qin Shijun has risen from the 6th place with 140 points to the 1st place with 195 points. That's only an increase of 55 points. On average, he only reaps 1 blood fiend per day. This is because of the reputation of the Crystal Palace, so they don't have to worry about someone secretly attacking them after entering the buffer zone. Moreover, every time the cultivators of the Crystal Palace enter the buffer zone, they have the advantage in numbers. In addition, the entire Crystal Palace now prioritizes taking care of Qin Shijun. Otherwise, the Azura that the Crystal Palace besieged back then would not have left the final blow for him. In the northeast direction of the 9 Mysteries Tower battlefield, the Tianxian sect was also facing the attack of Mara's army. However, compared to the current Purple Sun Palace, the Tianxian sect's current situation was undoubtedly much better. This was mainly because the Tianxian sect's 7th Fan Laozu was an expert among the pure yang cultivators. Otherwise, the Tianxian sect would not have been repeatedly feared by the Wuxing school and the Holy Land of the Central Plains because of his appearance. What's more, at this time, Tianxian sect also had a more terrifying pure yang cultivator, sky-splitting swordmaster Xiao Baiyu. Under the cooperation of the two, although the devil army that attacked Tianxian sect still had 2 celestial demons, in fact, Tianxian sect really had the upper hand. Under the joint suppression of the 2 pure yang cultivators, the 2 sky demons and most of the Azura in Mara's army were all restrained by the 2 of them. If it were not for the fact that the Tianxian sect's army was outnumbered, the Tianxian sect would have launched a counterattack long ago and defeated Mara's army. Another important reason why the Tianxian sect did not launch a counterattack so easily was because of the existence of the Taixian sect's territory, which was not too far away from the Tianqian sect's camp. The two sects had been enemies for many years. The Tianqian sect had never been afraid to think the worst of the other party. Unless the Tianqian sect had absolute confidence, they would not easily launch a counterattack against Mara's army. Otherwise, the Taishan sect would definitely not mind stabbing the Tianqian sect in the back. In fact, the Tianqian sect had been fighting against Mara's army for so long, but the Tianqian sect had never taken action. In addition to the fact that the Tianqian sect's two great cultivators, Han Wuya and Hua Wuyin, had been seriously injured in Jinling, and the Tianqian sect's two pure young cultivators, Lao Zhu, had been intimidating them. The most important reason was that when Mara's army invaded the Tianqian sect's camp, a group of Tianqian sect's elite cultivators had been patrolling outside the camp. This group of elites, led by the Tianqian sect's great cultivator, Qingli Lao Zhu, had launched a surprise attack against Mara's army. At the same time, they were also responsible for deterring and obstructing any forces who intended to plot against the Tianqian sect during the confrontation between the Tianqian sect and Mara's army. This time, Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu had come to the Tianqian sect's camp because Lin Yu Laozu had received a secret message from Xiao Baiyu. Recently, the Tianqian sect had been planning a counterattack against Mara's army. Lin Yu Laozu, who had mostly recovered from his injuries, had decided to go and help. After Lin Yu Laozu informed Jinling of this news through Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu had rushed over first. Last time, during the battle for Jinling's camp, Xiahou Wushang and Yun Jian had gone all out to help Jinling. They did not do anything about it. A magic array had taken shape on the highlands surrounding the valley, completely sealing off all the exits from the valley. Led by two great cultivators, several tens of cultivators stood outside the valley, hovering above the magic array as they watched the cultivators in the valley engage in a bloody battle with the Devil Luo army. These two great cultivators were acquaintances of Lu Ping. One was the great cultivator of the Taishan sect, Han Wuya. The other was none other than the second-generation cultivator of the Songhai sect, Wang Xianqing, who had strangely raised his level of cultivation to the late Dharma stage. At that moment, the two of them were smiling as they watched an old man entangled with a jade demon and two jade shuras in the valley. Han Wuya laughed loudly and said, "Brother Mara is indeed powerful. Even when three jade Mara join forces, they are completely suppressed. I admit that I am no match for this kind of power." At the side, Wang Xianqing smiled eerily and said, "You're going to die either way. Fellow Taoist Qingli, you should kill a few more demonic auras so that we won't have to deal with the aftermath later." Han Wuya clapped his hands and smiled. "Wonderful, wonderful. Brother Xianqing is right. Brother Qingli, did you hear that? Please fight Mara as much as you can. We have all the time in the world." Xiahou Wushang forced the Jade Shura in front of him to retreat. He took the opportunity to turn his flying sword and shoot it behind him. A blood Shura that was trying to sneak up on him was instantly pierced by the flying sword. Xiahou Wushang raised his head and looked at the cultivators of the Xian sect, who had trapped his sect and the demon Luo army in the valley. His eyes shone with a murderous light, but then he had to use all his energy to deal with the Jade Shura in front of him, who was coming at him again. On the other side of the valley, a beautiful and tall female cultivator had a cold expression on her face. Her entire body was filled with murderous intent, but there was a hint of hesitation. She looked at the handsome cultivator in front of her and said, "Sixth, why? Why did you betray us? Has the Xin sect ever done anything wrong to you?" The handsome cultivator did not say a word. He just did his best to resist the female cultivator's attacks. But the female cultivator in front of him was clearly much more powerful than he was. If the female cultivator had not used her full strength, he would not have been able to last until now. Qingli Laozu's rolling voice suddenly came. "Don't say anything more. If you are so crazy, just kill her." The female cultivator's expression was one of pain and misery. She suddenly let out a shrill scream, and the fierce attack stopped. A strange look flashed across the handsome cultivator's face, and he said, "So the gap between us is so big." The female cultivator looked at the handsome cultivator whose chest was gurgling with blood as he fell backward. The bitter expression on her face turned into a ferocious one. She then leaped into the midst of Devil Luo's team. Chapter 13:12. The Tianxian sect doesn't seem to be in a good spot. This should be one of the Tianxian sect's secret outposts. How did the Tianxian sect use a formation to block the valley and even lead a group of Mara inside? Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu had already snuck into the void hundreds of feet away from the valley. At this time, the two great cultivators, Han Wuya and Wang Xianqing, who were standing outside the formation above the valley, were completely unaware of the arrival of the two. They continued to taunt the Tianxian sect cultivators who were engaged in a life-and-death battle with the army of Mara in the valley. Not only did they have their gate blocked, but they were also able to quietly lead a group of Mara to attack the valley. They even easily changed the formation that was originally guarding the valley to be used by the enemy. The Tianxian sect must have gotten rid of a traitor. Yin Tianchu said resolutely, but Lu Ping also agreed with him. What do we do now? Lu Ping looked at the dozens of Tianxian sect cultivators around the valley. In addition to the two great cultivators, Han Wuya and Wang Xianqing, there were 5 mid-Dharma adepts and 8 early Dharma adepts. The remaining 30 to 40 Tianxian sect disciples who were maintaining the operation of the formation were all late core forging realm cultivators. At this time, it was obvious that Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu could not fight against so many people. Lu Ping said helplessly, "Let's wait and see first." The Tianxian sect is planning to wipe out this group of Tianxian sect cultivators in one fell swoop. When the Tianxian sect has killed all the Mara in the valley, it will be when the Tianxian sect is exhausted. At that time, the Tianxian sect will definitely attack with full force. At the same time, it will also be a good time for us to break the formation. In this way, the Tianxian sect might suffer greater losses, but this was also the best time for Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu to help. The Tianxian sect cultivators must be saved, but if Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu were to put themselves in danger in order to save the Tianxian sect cultivators, it would not be worth it. Suddenly, however, the cultivators from Supreme Enigma sect attacked. Several wretched screams rang out from within the valley. Lu Ping looked around and saw that these cultivators of the Taishan sect had taken advantage of the critical moment of the battle between the Tianxian sect cultivators and Mara to launch a sneak attack. The disciples of the Tianxian sect had no time to pay attention to anything else and were suddenly struck one after another. Some were killed by the sneak attack, while others were killed by Mara after the sneak attack. Qingli Laozu's angry roar came from the valley. Han Wuya, if the old man escapes today, I will repay your Taishan sect 100 times over. Han Wuya said darkly, if you want to take revenge on my sect, you'll have to see if you can survive until then. Do it. The formation that the Taishan sect had set up on the top of the valley was just a modification of the original formation that the Tianxian sect had used to protect their position. Although it had trapped the Tianxian sect cultivators in the formation in a hurry, it required dozens of core forging disciples to constantly use their inner yuan to maintain the operation of the formation. Therefore, at this time, those who were free to attack the Tianxian sect cultivators in the valley were all Dharma adepts. The Tianxian sect's core forging disciples in the valley were often killed by these Dharma adepts. Although a few Dharma adepts tried their best to save them, they were unable to attend to one thing and lose sight of another. Only the angry shouts and curses of the Tianxian sect's Dharma adepts could be heard coming from the valley. Yin Tianchu said from the side, if this goes on, I'm afraid there won't be many core forging disciples left in the valley. A green light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes, as if he had discovered something interesting. He smiled and said, that Qingli Laozu doesn't look like he's giving it his all. I'm afraid the Tianxian sect is still hiding their strength in this valley. Yin Tianchu's face did not change at all when he heard this. He only said, then maybe we don't need to do anything? Lu Ping smiled and said, no, on the contrary, we're going to do it soon. As soon as Lu Ping's voice fell, there was a sudden scream from the valley. Wang Xianqing suddenly turned into a black fog and disappeared from the sky above the valley. Han Wuya was holding a pair of long whips in his hands. It was the wind and rain dual whips that Lu Ping had seen before. Han Wuya and Huo Wuyin had originally each held one of these whips. The two of them had created the name, wind, and rain dual whips in the world of practitioners. But Huo Wuyin had been injured by Lu Ping, and his injury had not yet healed, so the whips were now under Han Wuya's control. Without the two great practitioners, Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu once again flew dozens of feet into the sky above the valley. The practitioners of the Tianqian sect could not detect them at all. When they looked at the scene in the valley, they saw that Qingli Laozu had seriously injured a Jade Shura. The three Jade Mara that were attacking him were about to be defeated one by one. Wang Xianqing and Han Wuya could no longer sit still. The two of them suddenly joined forces to attack from above the valley. For a moment, they formed a pincer attack with the two Jade Mara that were attacking Qingli Laozu. The black fog that Wang Xianqing had turned into fell from the sky like a black waterfall. A token about a foot long, wide at the top and narrow at the bottom, burst out of the black waterfall. The entire black waterfall suddenly turned into a spiral in the air, as if it had become a black snake, and wrapped around Qingli Laozu. The sea transferring order. Lu Ping, who was hiding in the void outside the valley, narrowed his eyes. This time, because the two great practitioners of the Tianqian sect had sneaked into the valley, the other Dharma adepts of the Tianqian sect were mostly focused on the valley. They did not know that there were already two people sneaking in. At this time, both Yin Tianchu and Lu Ping were confident that they could kill or seriously injure a mid-Dharma adept of the Tianqian sect if they suddenly attacked. But Lu Ping still stopped Yin Tianchu from attacking. He looked into the valley. At this time, the situation that Qingli Laozu was facing was almost hopeless. Lu Ping thought to himself, at this time, they should not be hiding anymore. Just as Wang Xianqing was using the vast sea technique to control the sea transferring order, trying to imprison Qingli Laozu, the wind whip in Han Wuya's hand knocked away the first calamity spirit treasure that Qingli Laozu had used, and the whip of rain followed closely behind to wrap around Qingli Laozu's neck. With the two great practitioners attacking at full force, Qingli Laozu's escape route was sealed, and his ability to fight back was restricted. There were also two Jade Mara coming at him aggressively, and he was in a desperate situation. "Old Qingli, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and die." Outside the valley, Lu Ping said in a low voice, "Do it." A mid-Dharma adept from the Taishan sect suddenly heard a deafening roar coming from behind him. When he quickly turned around, he saw a monstrous wave descending from the sky, engulfing him in a sky full of swords in one fell swoop. Enemy attack. Ugh. One of the mid-Dharma adepts had just shouted out loud when his voice stopped abruptly. He had already sensed that someone was attacking him. The treasure in his hand was already trying his best to protect his body, but Yin Tianchu's shapeless sword formula still managed to break through his protective spell and severely injure him. Chapter 13:13. Han Wuya revealed a proud expression. Ever since the battle at Jinling's encampment, the Great Xin sect had become the laughingstock of the cultivation world. Not only did a large sect from the central continent go looking for trouble with a medium-sized sect from the northern sea, but they were also captured alive by a medium-sized sect that didn't even have a great cultivator. In the end, they were imprisoned and used as a tool. In the end, the two of them returned with serious injuries, and Huo Wuin's source was even heavily injured. This time, he had planned for a long time to deal with the forces of the Tianqian sect that were roaming around the periphery of the station. He finally found their secret station and successfully trapped them in it. He even lured a team of Devil Luo into the valley to kill them. Now, it was a great opportunity for him to reap the benefits. "Old Ghost Qingli, what are you waiting for? Accept your death." Wishful thinking. Forefather Han Wuya's proud expression froze on his face. The tribulation spirit treasure in the hands of forefather Qingli, which had been sent flying by Han Wuya's wind whip, was suddenly caught by a hand that reached out from the air. Then, a figure controlled the wind-stopping flag, which had originally belonged to forefather Qingli, and charged toward Wang Xianqing in the air. As soon as it arrived, it blew away half of the black mist in the air. Even the black waterfall falling from the sky was blown to the side. It was this tilt that allowed Qingli Laozu to easily break free from the black waterfall. Qingli Laozu, who had lost his spirit treasure, smiled mockingly at Han Wuya. There was a flash of light in his hand, and a 3-inch tall milky white porcelain bottle appeared in his hand. Grade 2 Spirit Treasure, Spirit Sealing Bottle. How did this thing end up in your hands? Han Wuya didn't even care about the great cultivator from the Great Xian sect who had suddenly appeared and was fighting with Wang Xianqing. He just stared at the porcelain bottle in Qingli Laozu's hand and let out a strange cry. He tried to retreat. However, Qingli Laozu didn't use his Grade 2 Spirit Treasure to fight with Han Wuya. Instead, while Han Wuya was retreating with the wind whip, he suddenly turned around. The Grade 2 Spirit Sealing Bottle suddenly rose from Qingli Laozu's hand and expanded. The mouth of the bottle sucked in one of the Jade Shuras. The Jade Shuras were caught off guard and were sucked into the bottle. The other Jade Demon saw that its comrade couldn't fight back at all in front of this Grade 2 Spirit Treasure. It was also scared and retreated. Han Wuya, on the other hand, had calmed down. The wind and rain dual whips created a storm of whip shadows in the sky. They stacked on top of each other and steadily advanced toward Qingli Laozu. Even if Han Wuya's wind and rain dual whips weren't as good as a second tribulation spirit treasure, it was enough to fight against the Qingli forefather. If the Jade Demon had taken the opportunity to attack again, Han Wuya still had a chance to defeat the Qingli forefather. What's more, the cultivators of the Supreme Mystery Sect had already begun to join the battle in the valley. Although the exhausted Supreme Mystery Sect had gained the upper hand in the battle against the demonic Luo army and had a backup plan, the Supreme Mystery Sect had been waiting for them to tire themselves out. The moment they charged into the valley, they had caused great casualties to the Supreme Mystery Sect. Just as Han Wuya and the Qingli Great Ancestor began to fight, two wretched cries rang out from above the valley. Even though the shouts and cries of killing in the valley and the occasional roar of magic covered it up, Han Wuya could still clearly hear the two wretched cries coming from the top of the valley. Han Wuya's heart skipped a beat. Oh no, the sky above the valley has been sealed by a formation. It is impossible for the cultivators of the Tianxian sect to break out of the formation. Then there is only one possibility. Someone has attacked the cultivators of the Tianxian sect. Once the formation was broken, Han Wuya's painstaking plan to destroy the outer encampment of the Tianxian sect would be in vain. Once his plan was exposed, the Tianxian sect would have to face the wrath of the Tianxian sect. Thinking of the killing god who was standing on the side of the Tianxian sect, and the fact that the Tianxian sect was in the wrong, it was impossible to get the support of the Holy Lands like Wuxing School. Han Wuya suddenly felt a headache. Who could it be? Could it be that the Tianxian sect had a secret encampment outside the valley? Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu suddenly launched a sneak attack, killing and seriously injuring two mid-Dharma adepts of the Tianxian sect. The rest of the Tianxian sect cultivators surrounded the two, but most of the Dharma adepts of the Tianxian sect had already entered the valley to kill the Tianxian sect cultivators. Most of the core forging disciples were left in the sky above the valley to assist in the operation of the formation, coupled with a few Dharma adepts who stayed behind to guard the formation. Although they had the advantage in numbers, under the rampage of Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu, there were indeed heavy casualties. Although a few Dharma adepts who stayed behind tried their best to organize the core forging disciples into the formation, how could Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu let them do as they wished? A white jade lotus bloomed at Lu Ping's feet, protecting him within, while the thin water-flowing sword turned into a raging wave that rushed towards the shore, pushing back the attacks of the Tianxian sect cultivators layer by layer. At the same time, under the control of the shapeless sword technique, the water ghost sword kept appearing and disappearing among the surrounding Tianxian sect cultivators. Almost every time it attacked, it was able to cause casualties among the Tianxian sect cultivators. Lu Ping naturally did not stop there. The sword of the true spirit transformed into a dragon above Lu Ping's head, and every time it attacked, it was able to seriously injure the Dharma adepts who were hiding among the Tianxian sect cultivators who were trying to organize the formation. Only Lu Ping's inner Yuan and Divine Will were able to control 4 flying swords in one go, and at the same time, he was able to use 3 different kinds of powerful sword techniques at the same time. Apart from Lu Ping, who had attracted the attention of most of the Tianqian sect cultivators with his powerful attacks. Tianchu had transformed into an invisible killer, appearing and disappearing unpredictably over the valley. Almost every time he attacked, he was able to kill or seriously injure a Tianqian sect cultivator. With the two of them working together, the sealing formation that the Supreme Profound sect had set up over the valley could no longer be maintained. With a loud bang, the hidden great cultivator of the Heavenly Profound sect broke through the formation in the valley while entangled with Wang Xianqing. The two of them fought fiercely all the way until they were several kilometers away from the valley. At this time, the Tianqian sect also knew that someone had come to their aid. Seeing that the sealing formation over the valley had been broken through, the morale of the Tianqian sect cultivators was greatly boosted. One by one, they flew into the air, got rid of Mara, and rushed out of the valley. The only opponents left in front of them were the Tianqian sect cultivators. "Brother Liu, it's you." Xiahou Wushang also rushed out of the valley, but he had shaken off the cultivator of the Taishan sect who was trying to attack him. He had not shaken off the Jade Shura and Blood Shura that were following him. However, when Xiahou Wushang saw that nearly 20 Tianqian sect cultivators were besieging Lu Ping, he was overjoyed. He shouted, "Brother Liu, I'm coming to help you." After saying this, he rushed straight into the battle that was besieging Lu Ping with the two Tianqian sect cultivators behind him. The Tianqian sect cultivators could not stop them, so they let them break in and then continued to besiege them. However, they had forgotten that the two Shuras behind Xiahou Wushang did not recognize the Tianqian sect or the Tianqian sect. In their eyes, there was no difference between the two. Seeing that there were human cultivators closer to them, the two Shuras gave up chasing Xiahou Wushang and rushed into the midst of the Tianqian sect cultivators to beat them up. This time, it became Lu Ping and Xiahou Wushang working together, Jade Shura and a Blood Shura, to attack the nearly 20 Tianqian sect cultivators. The Tianqian sect cultivators were suddenly thrown into chaos. For a time, there were heavy casualties, and the formation over the valley could no longer be maintained and completely collapsed. Seeing that the formation in the valley had been broken, the Tianqian sect cultivators, who had been besieged in the valley by the Tianqian sect and Mara, were suddenly freed from their predicament. The Tianqian sect's advantage, which had been waiting for them to exhaust themselves, was offset by the appearance of Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu. The two sides were now standing on the same starting line. However, at this time, the Tianqian sect's morale was greatly boosted. On the contrary, the Tianqian sect's originally stable advantage was instantly reversed. Some of the cultivators were still entangled with the Tianqian sect cultivators, while the others had given up after their plan failed. The battle was now in the Tianqian sect's favor. "Lu Tianping, so it's you." Han Wuya roared through gritted teeth. However, at this time, he was too tired to deal with the flames coming out of the spirit-fixing bottle held by Qingli Laozu. He could not spare a hand to deal with Lu Ping, so he could only curse a few words at Lu Ping. However, before Han Wuya could curse a few words, a cold chill had already penetrated the back of his head from behind. Han Wuya screamed, no longer caring about Lu Ping who had ruined his plan. The spiritual qi in his body boiled, and the light under his feet flashed continuously. He had already appeared several feet behind him, and at the same time, the wind whip in his hand had already exploded. The strong wind it had stirred up was already whipping behind him. Clang! A dagger appeared in mid-air, blocking the wind whip. The black-robed Yin Tianchu was sent flying back by Han Wuya's fierce counterattack. However, at this time, Qingli Laozu stretched out a finger and a tongue of flame took the opportunity to lick Han Wuya's body. Han Wuya screamed, and the other rain whip set up layers of rain in front of him. However, in the end, it still could not completely block the tongue of flame that came out of the spirit-fixing bottle. The tongue of flame stubbornly broke through the curtain of rain and burned Han Wuya's body as he tried to dodge. Han Wuya let out a scream. His entire back was burnt black, and the bun on his head was burned into a mess. He did not dare to stay here any longer. He shouted, "Taishan sect, retreat, retreat." After all, it was a large sect that had been famous for a long time in Middle-earth. At this time, The Taishian sect was at a disadvantage, but after Han Wuya shouted, the Taishian sect cultivators still did not panic. Several Dharma adepts gathered together with Han Wuya and Laozu at the back. The Tianqian sect cultivators tried to take the opportunity to kill them, but they were blocked by Han Wuya and the others. They only killed a few Taishian sect disciples who were too slow to run. Qingli Laozu then stopped the others from chasing. Don't chase a desperate enemy. First, kill the rest of the Mara. The cultivators who were left behind to guard the valley were no longer worried. With the help of Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu, the Tianqian sect cultivators quickly wiped out the remaining Mara in the valley. Chapter 13-14. At the end of the day, this group of Mara cultivators had merely been lured here by the Taishian sect to deplete the strength of the Tianqian sect cultivators in this secret encampment. Many of them had already been killed in the chaotic battle earlier. Now that the Tianqian sect was free, this group of Mara cultivators could no longer cause any trouble, and all of them were turned into battle points for the cultivators. You're Lu Tianping? A tall female cultivator, who was filled with murderous intent and hostility, came before Lu Ping. She looked him up and down before saying, "You're very strong, but my battle points have already surpassed yours." Oh. Only then did Lu Ping notice that there was also a psychic jade tablet in this secret encampment of the Tianqian sect. Currently, on the battle points leaderboard of the mid-Dharma adepts, Lu Ping's battle points had already reached 189 points, but his ranking had slipped from 4th to 5th. The person who had surpassed him was the Tianqian sect's chief disciple, Chao Jianping, who had originally been ranked 6th. She was now ranked 4th with 193 points. Qin Shijun was still in 1st place, with 214 points. Nangong Xiaojian had surpassed Fan Mingjie and was ranked 2nd with 205 points, while Fan Mingjie was ranked 3rd with a whopping 200 points. After Lu Ping's ranking changed again, Yuan Feixiang's points remained the same. She had fallen to 7th place, and Hua the Infinite had caught up from 8th place. Yuan Feixiang was only 3 points behind Yuan Feixiang. However, Lu Ping saw that Xie Tianyang's battle points had risen again, but he was still ranked 13th. As long as his points rose, it meant that Xie Tianyang's injuries were no longer a problem, which was good news for Lu Ping. Besides that, Lu Ping also saw Sang Yu's name in 15th place. He had also caught up. After all, she was the most outstanding Empyrean walker in the Spirit Beast sect, so how could she be weaker than anyone else? What do you think? Interested in a match? The female cultivator was filled with hostility. She looked full of battle intent, but it was more like she was looking for someone to vent her anger on. Lu Ping glanced at her and said, "You are Chao Jianping?" The female cultivator snorted and said with a hint of arrogance, "That's right." Lu Ping casually swung his right hand, and a sword light flashed past Chao Jianping's side at lightning speed. Chao Jianping was startled, and she retreated several feet in a row while shouting, "What are you doing?" Lu Ping looked behind her and shrugged. "I'm in front of you now." Chao Jianping's face showed a hint of suspicion. She suddenly turned her head in the direction of the sword light that Lu Ping had slashed. She saw Xiahou Wushang looking gloomily at a Jade Shura whose body was falling apart. There was a wound on the back of the Jade Shura's heart, which had obviously shattered the Jade Shura's heart space. On the psychic jade steel, Lu Ping's battle points suddenly moved, rising from 189 to 199. His ranking also jumped up by 1 place, pushing Chao Jianping, who had just risen to 4th place, back to 5th place. "You!" Chao Jianping's face was suddenly filled with anger, and she shouted, "You are taking advantage of others. Shameless." Although she said that, Chao Jianping knew that if she had been in Lu Ping's position, she would not have been able to dodge the sword light. Although she looked angry, she was afraid in her heart. Lu Ping smiled and did not respond. Chao Jianping saw that Lu Ping was so lazy, and she was even angrier. However, she knew that Lu Ping was the key to the Tianqian sect's victory in this battle in the valley. So she snorted coldly, and the conveyance light flashed under her feet. She went to the valley to find the unlucky Mara that had not been eliminated yet. However, when she was in midair, Chao Jianping's conveyance light stopped, and a red embroidered ball appeared in her hand. It was also a first tribulation spiritual treasure. The embroidered ball flew out of her hand, and the brain of a scarred blood Azura burst. Not far from the blood Azura, In Tianchu stepped out of the void and stared at Chao Jianping in front of him. This blood Azura was obviously In Tianchu's prey. It had been seriously injured by In Tianchu previously, and only had one last attack left. Unexpectedly, it was intercepted by Chao Jianping. Chao Jianping made a provocative look at In Tianchu, and the conveyance light flashed under her feet and disappeared. At the same time, In Tianchu's figure once again hid in the void. Seeing Xiahou Wushang coming over, Lu Ping smiled at him and said, "Brother Xiahou, don't blame me for stealing your battle points." Xiahou Wushang smiled bitterly, waved his hand and said, "Let's not talk about that. It's just that my senior sister is simple-minded and only knows how to cultivate. She doesn't know the ways of the world. Previously, she encountered 6th junior brother's betrayal of the sect, so it was inevitable that she would act a little too aggressively. Please don't blame her, Brother Lu." Lu Ping's previous attack was actually a sneak attack, but Chao Jianping was able to retreat several feet in such a short time. Even if Lu Ping really attacked Chao Jianping, that sword attack might not be able to achieve its full effect. Chao Jianping was the first heir of the Tianxin sect, and even someone like Xiahou Wushang was suppressed by her. Her reputation was indeed well-deserved. Lu Ping heard this and said, "Senior sister Chao is the first heir of your sect, and her strength is indeed well-deserved. But what happened to your 6th junior brother?" Xiahou Wushang sighed and said, "It's a shame for our sect. 6th junior brother entered our sect at a young age, and his aptitude and comprehension are the best in our sect. He is the youngest among the heir cultivators of our sect, and he is also senior sister Chao's childhood sweetheart. I didn't expect that he would not only expose this valley to the Xin sect, but also send away the guarding disciples of the valley before the Xin sect arrived, and attract Mara, causing the sect to fall into chaos. This allowed the Xin sect to take control of the protective formation of the station and transform it into a trap formation to seal off the valley. Oh, and this, has he escaped with the Xin sect now?" Xiahou Wushang shook his head and said, "No, he was killed by senior sister Chao." A strange look flashed across Lu Ping's face, and he said nothing more. Xiahou Wushang obviously didn't want to say anything more. Lu Ping was led by Xiahou Wushang to see Qingli Laozu. When Qingli Laozu saw Lu Ping coming, he laughed and said, "Lu Xiaoyu, I haven't seen you for decades, and I didn't expect you to have achieved so much. The old man thanks you on behalf of the Xin sect today." Lu Ping quickly said, "Senior, you flatter me. I just happened to be at the right time. Besides, senior brother Xiahou Wushang helped us guard the station, and I have a grudge against the Xin sect. Lu Ping will not stand by and do nothing." Lu Ping could see that Qingli Laozu's face was very pale. It was obvious that he had been attacked by Han Wuya and the Jade Shura. Even if he had a second-level spirit treasure, the spirit sealing bottle, he had been seriously injured. Lu Ping paused and said, "This time, I received news from Senior Lin Yu that your sect is preparing to counterattack the Mara army that is besieging the station. Therefore, I and junior brother Yin have come to help. After this, there will be a few Dharma adepts from our sect who will come to help. If you have anything to do, just let us know." Qingli Laozu was overjoyed and said, "Has Master Lin Yu already arrived? But it is already a pleasant surprise to have Lu Xiaoyu's help. The Xin sect will be very sensitive to your help." As the two of them spoke, a beam of light descended from outside the valley. It was the second great adept who had appeared in the Xin sect station. This person had used a secret technique to hide his level of practice, pretending to be a mid-Dharma adept. When Han Wuya and Wang Xianqing could not help but attack Qingli Laozu, he suddenly attacked and almost seriously injured him. "Disciple Wu Lu, come, let me introduce you to a rising star. This is Lu Tianping, Lu Xiaoyu of Beihai Jinling." Qingli Laozu personally introduced Lu Ping. It was obvious that he valued Lu Ping very much. At the same time, he said to Lu Ping, "Lu Xiaoyu, this is the second-generation adept of our sect, Wu Lu. He has just passed the second lightning tribulation. This time, we were careful. Otherwise, the Xin sect's attack this time would have caused us much more losses. Wu Lu Laozu was a middle-aged man with a clear face and a long black beard. The two of them had met, and Wu Lu Laozu was obviously very polite to Lu Ping. Then did the Xian sect retreat? Wu Lu Laozu nodded and said, they retreated. However, although the great adept from Beihai who fought with me, Wang Xianqing, is not very strong, there are many strange things about him. Lu Xiaoyu is from Beihai. Do you know anything about this Wang Xianqing? Lu Ping knew that Xiahou Wusheng must have told the elders of the sect about the last battle, so he was not the least bit surprised that Wu Lu Laozu knew about Wang Xuanqing's identity. Hearing Wu Lu Laozu's words, Lu Ping also wanted to ask the two Laozu about this matter, so he told them about Wang Xuanqing's background. In the end, he said, this Wang Xianqing has been seriously injured by me. Unless he can obtain the legendary Samling 5 Elements elixir, there is no way he can recover. Moreover, this person's talent is not necessarily very good, so it is impossible for him to push his level of practice from the early Dharma stage to the late Dharma stage in just 100 years. Lu Ping paused and then said, Junior's knowledge is shallow, and I really do not know the reason behind this. I wonder if the two elders understand the reason behind this? Wu Lu Laozu and Qing Laozu looked at each other, and Wu Lu Laozu said in a low voice, it is not impossible to push a practitioner's level of practice from the early Dharma stage to the late Dharma stage in just 100 years, but the training resources needed to do so are not worth the cost. It is just that this person was once injured by Lu Xiaoyu, but still his level of practice increased by leaps and bounds. This is a little strange. Lu Ping asked tentatively, does this have anything to do with the Taishan sect? Based on my understanding of the Songhai sect, let's not talk about whether they are able to refine the legendary 3 spirits and 5 elements elixir. Just the amount of resources required to raise an early Dharma adept to the late Dharma stage in such a short period of time is not something that the Songhai sect can easily achieve. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.